Thank you all for being here. Like I said, you should be seeing the homepage of the state library's online help desk and knowledge base. The product itself is called Zoho, so if you hear that name every once in a while, that's why. Before we get started today, I just wanted to do a brief overview of what you're getting out of the shared catalog by being members. Specifically, you're sharing 3 things in the Montana shared catalog. The first thing is access to the bibliographic records in the catalog itself. So before you joined, the records you all had access to were those that your schools would either bring in through SmartPort or perhaps originally catalog or what have you. And now you're going to have access to a whole lot more, pardon me, a whole lot more bibliographic records. Pardon me. So hopefully that will make your copy cataloging a lot easier because chances are, because we have other schools in our consortium, that they will already have records that you want to attach to. So that's number 1. Number 2 is you're sharing the software, access to the software. You have already been using the integrated library system that the shared catalog uses. Been using the Circe Dynex Symphony system. We also use that, obviously, but you're going to be on an updated version, and there are a lot of extra features that we have that you haven't used before. So that's kind of what we're going to be going over today. And finally, the third thing that you share is access to the state library staff who administer and train on and troubleshoot the system itself. So I'm the lone trainer of the group, but the system administrators on the call today are going to be some of the people that you're going to interact with through the ticket system. They're all very nice, and we're excited to have you on. So just be aware that the ticket system is what we use to be able to see what everyone's working on and be able to kind of tag team problems if we need to troubleshoot things. So when you submit a ticket, we immediately see it. We can all see it. So just know that we're here even if we're not there in person. Okay. So starting from the Montana State Library knowledge base, if you don't have the link already, I am going to share it in chat. Okay, I just shared it. And the first thing that I'm going to have you do, if you haven't already, is create a help desk account. This will allow you to not only create tickets, but you can see tickets that you've opened or ones that may already have been resolved, but you have to revisit the question you had. It will save your tickets in your account. So the way you're going to do that is in the upper right-hand corner here, you have the sign up option. If you would click that, if you're already a member, meaning you've already created an account, you can sign in. But if you haven't already, you're going to want to put your name here and also your school email. Mine obviously is my work email. You're going to need to enter the text you see in the CAPTCHA and then click sign up. Now, the one tricky thing about creating a password is that they have some password requirements, and I can never remember if they actually show you that when you're filling out your password. So just in case they don't show you that, I'm going to put that in chat. So it has to be a minimum of 8 characters. You can't have 2 identical consecutive characters, so you can't have 2 O's in a row, for example. You need both upper and lowercase letters, at least 1 number, and at least 1 special character. It's very secure. Then once you have submitted your name, email, all that jazz, you'll get an email sent to your work email account to confirm your account. If you don't see that in there, just double check your spam. It may take a minute or two, but I just want to make sure we have you up and ready to go in the ticket system before we get going with the rest of the training. And once you're done creating your password and confirming your account, just log in if you would like. It may log you in automatically once you've confirmed, or you can go to the sign in screen here if it doesn't. So if folks could just confirm for me when they're ready, then we'll get going on the next bit. All right. So it may automatically have you logged into your account, which is great. You can add a picture if you want. You can make sure your time zone's correct, I think. And that's where you'll see tickets once you've opened them. So the next thing I want to practice is for you guys to submit a practice ticket. And here's the cool thing. There will always be a submit a ticket link at the bottom of any page you're on. And that's regardless of whether you're in our knowledge base, looking at articles, all that. So if you just from the home page, click submit a ticket, here's what's going to happen. You'll notice that the Montana Shared Catalog is one of several departments here to choose from. So we're just having you filter right away who the ticket is going to. We're the one here up in the middle. That's the one you can submit a ticket, but just so you're aware of what these other departments are. The Montana History Portal, formerly known as the Montana Memory Project, is the state's kind of online resource for digital collections relating to Montana's cultural heritage. You may have worked on some assignments or projects using that. Aspen is our statewide library directory. So that we can use this tool to look up libraries, who to contact. It's also, it has an event calendar, all that jazz. It's pretty cool. Statewide projects is something that one of our colleagues is in charge of, Kara Orban. She handles things like your Overdrive or Sora contract, for example, library program resources. This is generally for our public librarians. It's just, different resources that you can use for like the summer reading program, things like that, and questions about it. And then finally, questions about our hotspot lending program. So you're going to go to Montana Shared Catalog, click Submit Ticket. You'll see the department here is automatically filled in. The category defaults alphabetically to acquisitions. That's not something that the Billings schools use, so don't worry about that. And you can choose any other category here, or you can keep it at acquisitions. This is just a practice ticket. But you can narrow it down to a cataloging question, circulation, configuration itself, connectivity. So for example, if maybe workflows isn't opening for you or keeps closing down, but you still have internet access. Enterprise is the OPAC or online catalog. Inventory, BLUEcloud Analytics, and so on. So if you just want to choose one of those, you don't have to enter a subcategory, so I wouldn't worry about that. Just put practice somewhere in the ticket. the subject line or the description. And just notice that down here, if you're not already logged in, I think it may prompt you for your name and email. Now, you have the option to set a priority. These are low, medium, and high. Generally, tickets with a high priority, anything that has to do with connectivity to the system. If you're not able to access your online catalog or workflows or what have you, that's something that we consider high priority. But if there's something else that feels like an emergency to you, you're welcome to set it as high, and we'll address it accordingly. So classification's also not required, but if you have a question, a problem you want us to troubleshoot, or you're requesting something or other. So just know that those are there. You can also attach a file. So for example, screenshots, sometimes when you run into something that's giving you trouble, it's nice for us to be able to see what you're seeing. And when you're submitting a ticket, especially if it's for troubleshooting, it's really helpful if more detail is better. So explaining the issue you're having, if you've already tried some things that didn't work, let us know what those are. And that's just really helpful. So instead of a ticket I've definitely gotten, which no judgment, but sometimes it'll say something like, workflows looks weird, or workflows, something or other. It's like a student coming up to you and being like, I know the book was blue, but I don't know what else, what the title was or anything like that. So we'll just ask you for more information. And if you get a category, quote unquote, incorrect, don't worry, we can adjust all this stuff as needed for our own statistics. So let's see, system administrators, have we got any practice tickets submitted already?
I have 2 now, I see.
Woo!
Keep them coming.
So just keep in mind, I don't know if folks have printed off the outlines or the login sheets with barcodes on them, but what I recommend is as we go through this training, keep in mind that there may be things you want to open tickets about, and either write those down, or you can submit a ticket as we go through training, but if it's, humans aren't really good at multitasking, so I just recommend writing it down and then going back through, making sure you open a ticket for all those different things. You're not bothering us when you open tickets, so please don't hesitate. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to submit this ticket. I'm going to go back to the home page. And the next thing we're going to talk about are the resources that are already in the help desk to help you with commonly asked questions or specific procedures. And where those live is in this knowledge base section. I'm going to click on that. Well, actually, first I want to show you the general search. That's the whole point of why we're on this home page. Similar to a Google search, you can just type a basic question or keyword to search our knowledge base articles. So, for example, a little bit later today, we're going to talk about our bibliographic record standards. So if I type in record standards, you'll see that we'll get some suggested articles below, specifically the one on our record standards, as well as a how-to for searching when you're cataloging, and some other things related to record standards. So you can type and search that way. I know that's something that the system administrators like to do. I'm more of a browser, and we'll get to that. So I'm going to choose this record standards page. Don't worry about what's on here right now. what I want you to notice is here on the right-hand side, we have some related articles that are all in the cataloging section of the knowledge base. So it's kind of the surrounding articles, the tags we have on it, as well as related articles, which are similar. But just know that they're there. And pardon the scroll, but again, down here at the bottom, you have submit a ticket. I'll try not to do too much of that scrolling. I know it's a little sickening. Also, you can search from within articles. Just know that it's already narrowed down to cataloging. If you search from the home page, it'll search the whole knowledge base. Something to just be aware of. So I'm going to click knowledge base now. And again, just like with the ticket system, it's going to say, hey, which department's knowledge base do you want to view? We're going to go to the shared catalog. And here you'll see how we kind of divide up our knowledge base. So Zoho, our online help desk, we have instructions for creating an account, submitting a ticket, things like that. We also have, we're going to talk about BLUEcloud Analytics at the end of the day today. We have a bunch of stuff on that, cataloging, circulation, all that good stuff. So just know that there's multiple ways to search depending on how you like to do that. Okay. So now, any way you would like to search, you can search from the home page, you can search within the articles here in our knowledge base. Try finding the article that talks about searching in the online catalog. And again, the online catalog is called Enterprise. So I'm going to do that here as well. If I use the keyword searching, for example, and granted, I'm pretty familiar with this system. I create and maintain a lot of these articles, but you'll see that we have a few different searching guides. One's for the online catalog. We also have one specific to circulation and one specific to cataloging, because we know staff don't always do both of those things. I know that a lot of you do, but we divided it out that way. I think it'd be a little more approachable. So I am going to pull up Enterprise Searching Guide. And this is basically what we're going to talk about next. So just know that these things exist here. And you don't have to read this now, but it is there for you. And it's also in the outline that I provided that you can print off, or you can just pull it up in Adobe PDF or Word and click on the links directly. Any questions about the knowledge base or the help desk? So let's get to looking at your online catalog pages. I'm going to pull up one for the one I have on the handout is Ponderosa Elementary. So I'm going to move that over. Okay. And excellent. It looks like you should be able to see that. If your library is not Ponderosa Elementary, do not worry. You can put your library's policy name after the last slash, and it needs to be in all caps. All of them start with BS2 dash. And if you're wondering what your library policy name is, that is on the login sheet that also has the barcodes on it. It'll be in the, I believe, the upper left-hand corner. For example, if I have a sheet for the Alkali school, hopefully I'm not shortening that too much. But if I wanted to change this, it would look like that. I'd be able to pull up their libraries page as well. You guys have some great logos, just to say. I'm going to go back to Ponderosa's page because I like it. Does anyone have a question about how to get to their library's OPAC? Sounds like no. If you do, let us know and we'll get you there. Okay, so the first thing I want you to notice is just the basic layout of this homepage. We have links to Sora here, as well as the World Book Online. And then we have this book river that automatically cycles through recently added items to the collection. One thing that we have coming that isn't quite here yet, but will be, I believe, by the time school starts, is a list of quick links to certain special collections that you want to highlight or other resources. For example, I think maybe Indian Education for All is going to be one of the quick links here. And if there's a resource or a part of your collection you want highlighted in a quick link, let us know. Or if you want to know what other libraries are doing for that and you're just curious, you can still open a ticket for that as well, but it'll just take you directly to that resource. Okay. Let's see. Also over here to the left, if you are an elementary, and I don't know about middle schools possibly, but if you're an elementary library, we have a link to the kids catalog. And I'll get to that next. But just know that that's there. I want to do a basic search from this home screen first. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to do a simple keyword search here. Oop, not shouting. I'm going to do dragons. I'm not even going to mess with anything over here to the left. I'm just going to do search. Give it a second. Okay. And here's how your results list will automatically display. It lets you know that we have 105 results found, and you'll see each item with its book cover art, title, more information about that item, as well as where it's located in the library on the shelf. So you got your call number, the way that, its item type, how it checks out, and then its status. So for example, Dragons Beware is currently on the shelf, which is pretty great. I think especially for some of our younger searchers, but this could be anyone as well, you'll see at the top of the list of results that there is different view options. We're currently in list view. That looks like kind of this little list notebook. If you click on the 4 boxes or the thumbnail view, this is what this will look like. So we're sacrificing some of the title information for just bigger book covers, which I know can be helpful for folks who may not know the exact title of the item, for example, that they want in a series, but if they see the book cover, they can definitely tell. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the list view for now. Let's see. Okay, so the results list automatically sorts by relevance. It tells you that right here. And relevance is just kind of like a point system. So my term, dragons, if an item is found in the title, for example, it gets more points. But then if it was just a subject heading, but if the term dragons appears in the title and the subject heading, or maybe the series title, it accrues more points, and so it goes higher up in the list. You can also sort by publication date, ascending or descending, sort by title or author. So if I wanted it to be descending, for example, just know that I can do that. You also can narrow your search using facets from the result page, and that is these bits here on the left. So you'll see I'm already limited to my library, Ponderosa, and I can narrow it down further. Maybe I want to look at all the subject headings. You can click View All, see how many results are attached to each heading, and maybe I just want dragons, fiction, that's it. Click Include. That's kind of the one tricky part about this. You'll see I've now narrowed my search by that subject heading. If you want to use the facets, you need to select them and then either click Include or Exclude, depending on what you're trying to do. It doesn't apply those automatically just by clicking. So that's kind of the one extra click we have here. You can also narrow by publication date or date ranges, like what you have. Material type, audience, genres, either fiction or nonfiction, and so on. If I want to remove any of these filters, you can just click the X. It will remove them and go back to your original set of results. So that's one way to search, and I think that's the way a lot of us do search, regardless of our age. But just know that this search pane is always at the top, regardless of whether you're looking at your results list or not. And you can adjust your search here as well. So for example, because I'm at the Ponderosa Elementary Library, it defaults to my library for results. If I use this dropdown, I can also expand my search to all of your school district's elementary schools, or I can just look at the libraries of all the schools in your district. So just know that that's an option. You also can, instead of doing an all fields keyword search, you can search specific fields, title, series, author, and so on. Finally, there is an advanced search option, and if you click that, it sort of inserts or applies Boolean searching for you, the and, ors, and nots kind of operators of searching. So instead of having to keep those operator words in mind, you can just say, I want my results to only include records that have all of these words, and you can just list all the keywords here. Or an exact phrase, you can just list it there without putting it in quotation marks, and so on. Instead of using an additional limits of any library, just know that we already have put down here the same limits that are on the homepage of your library specifically, all the other types of schools like yours and all the other schools in your district. So this is here. I don't think it gets used very much, which is not to say you can't use it, but instead of defaulting to that screen, you can just pull it up manually over here. Okay. One last thing I want to show you. If I perform this search for dragons and I know it's something that maybe one of the staff members would like to see, or for a project, or maybe one of your students who's really excited about dragons, there are a couple ways to do that. First of all, just the link. This is a permalink to this specific search of just an all fields keyword search of dragons. You can share this link and it will populate just like this. You can also subscribe to an RSS feed of this search as well. So those are a couple things. I know sometimes it's helpful to be able to share things like that immediately with your teachers as a resource for them or for yourself. So that's kind of our first thing on searching and navigating using your online catalog. Does anyone have any questions before we get into more of the common tasks that you can do aside from searching? I guess I could go into one of these records just to show you more information. So to go into a record, you can click the title or the cover art. And again, you'll see more information on subject headings, ISBN. You'll see that the format for this is books. If the format were a book on CD, say, you would see a CD here instead, and I believe it would say audio recording or something similar to that. If it were a Blu-ray, you'd have like a little Blu-ray disc and it would say Blu-ray. And then again, you have your holdings in your library. And here's another little tab, explore reading level, summary, and more. So if I click on this, it'll give you the reading level, other books at that level, the summary, more about the author and what they've written, and you may also like. I mean, we can just kind of keep going here. So just know that that's there. It can be really helpful. For future reference, just for our cataloging section, and I'll try to remember to mention this again, know that there's a staff view of the MARC record. So if you click that, it'll give you the specific fields, tags, indicators. If that's anything that you find useful, just know that that's there. Any questions? Thoughts? Is anyone excited?
I was just saying to my in-person coworkers that I'm grateful for this update for the enterprise look of the online catalog for students is going to be a lot better.
That's awesome. And I also almost forgot. I apologize, you guys. I'm going to go back to the home page by clicking this home button, and I just want to show you the kids catalog. So you can also bring this up for your younger students. It's similar in look. You can still, do searching from the top of this page, but it's divided up in a more visual kind of grouping way. So if you have a subject or something that you want listed here that isn't, open a ticket because we'll see what we can do. And for example, animals, always a solid choice. It takes you more deeply into, oh, okay, what kind of animals are you wanting to learn about? So I obviously want to learn about dinosaurs. And it will pull up items, again, sorted by relevance for that subject. And if you go into the record, similar, right, to what we just viewed, you can still look at the You May Also Like tab. So yeah, I think this one, because of the grouping, even if it's your library, it may show all the elementary schools in your district.
And Kylie, because in that search box, there was everything there. If you use the
Oh,
drop
that's
down,
right.
then limit. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I will update that.
Yeah, so we're still kind of iron things out as we find them. If you run into any questions or issues with your kids catalog or the online catalog generally, just open a ticket. There are a lot of libraries in your district, so we're still kind of ironing some things out.
We're still catching things, so that's what the ticket system's for.
Yep.
And Kylie, you've got some really good comments
Oh,
as
great.
chat. Yes, much nicer than the library. Yeah, we're happy to move you to enterprise. The library worked, but this is we think
Yeah.
better for sure. And a
Yep.
couple of the AR levels, that is really useful for schools, we know.
That's awesome. We are so excited to have the Billings Public Schools in our consortium. So the feelings are mutual, folks. Okay. Um, let's see here. The next thing I was thinking of going over is common things that students and staff may use Enterprise for. I'm just going to go back to this homepage. All right, so for the next part of the training, we're going to do a few different things. We're going to talk about logging into your account to see your current checkouts, possibly renew or adjust holds if that's something that your library has turned the functionality on for. We also are going to talk about creating, pardon me, lists that you can do a couple of different things with as well. And just before we switch into that, I apologize, I kind of skipped over this. This contact tab, if you click it, it should list your library, link to your school's website, and have a phone number and address for your library or your school. So if that information needs to be updated, please open a ticket and let us know. You also have the option to enable accessibility mode if you or your students would like to use that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is log in. Let's say I'm a student or a staff member at home and I just want to look at my account online. And mine automatically populate because I use the same examples a lot. Okay. So here's where I enter my password or PIN. You can see that term those terms are interchangeable when it comes to workflows. So if you have forgotten your password or PIN, you can click that and enter your card number, and a recovery link will be emailed to the email address on file at your library. So you would need to have an email address on your account to do that. If they already know their password, but they want to change it, they can log in with the original password. And then once you're logged in, go to My Account. And it automatically defaults to library checkouts here. I currently don't have any checked out, but if I go to personal information, this is where they can change their password or PIN. So they'd enter their current one and then confirm their new one and click update. So just know that those are two ways that students or staff can update their passwords without you having to help them. Of course, you still can help them and update it in workflows on their behalf, but this could possibly save you some time. Okay, and like you see, I don't have any checkouts. I have placed a couple of holds. I know our elementary and I believe our middle school libraries, students cannot place their own holds in the online catalog, which is why you don't see that option there. For the high schools, they do have the option to place holds. And I just forced this for my training purposes. Don't worry, elementary librarians, you shouldn't be able to, your students shouldn't be able to place holds online. But this is where they would appear. So I have a couple holds on Dragon items, and you'll see that their status is pending. I've made the request, but the hold hasn't been filled yet. It lets me know which library I'm going to pick it up at, which generally is going to be my school's library. if there's an expiration date on a hold. Here is also down at the bottom of the page, you can see people can choose to cancel their holds. They can either select all or do one at a time. Can cancel holds. Generally, they won't have the ability to change their pickup location, so don't worry about that. That's a little bit more helpful for our public libraries. Suspending holds. I think that's something that a lot of staff may have to do for students or staff possibly. An example of this would be if the student says, oh, I'm going to be out because my family is going on this trip and I don't want my hold to come up while I'm away. You can edit or suspend the hold starting on whichever date until whichever date. So if I was going on a trip with my family for over the next week, I can enter the start and end dates here, and then my hold request would be suspended. So if there was someone else in line also waiting for the hold behind me, it would go to them first, but I wouldn't lose my place in line. It would be basically reinstated after the suspension ended. You can also cancel a suspension or edit it if the time range needs to change. Now, this might not be something you use very often, but just hold it in your back pocket. If the student or staff has any fines, those would show up here. I know that you folks are non-fining, so that may be something you don't often have to concern yourself with. But for example, if an item was assumed or marked as lost, that fine would show up here. Does anyone have questions just about my account?
So, Kylie, there's a question about the students and staff only having card numbers and asking if they will be just prompted to create a password for the first time they try to access their account. Is that better for my sound?
Yes, much better.
It's if they create a new user manually, it will auto-generate, but during the load that we're running with the export from Power Schools, we're just creating it as change me.
Is that in all caps or
Yes.
lowercase? Okay.
All caps.
So the default is, I'm just going to put this here on the screen, type it in. The default, if they're, oh, of course it won't show, will look like this. Change me in all caps, and it is case sensitive. Okay, so we've talked about logging in to your account. I'll pull up an example of placing a hold in just a minute. Now, creating lists. So what I recommend, if you're thinking about creating a list of items to hold on to in your online account, I'm thinking, you know, as library staff, maybe there are school projects for certain teachers that happen at a certain time every year. You want to collect a bunch of those resources and just have a list handy, or maybe you want to make a list of items you want to put on display or take to classroom visits if you do that kind of thing. The thing I recommend is always log in first. It's just a little bit easier because then when you click My Lists, it'll automatically take you to your My Lists page. If you're not logged in, which I'll show you, it's not like a bad thing if you aren't logged in first. But if you go to My Lists, it'll prompt you to log in because doing that allows you to save lists. And if you create a list from here, it's automatically just saved as a temporary list, and that list will go away when your session refreshes or ends. So if you want to save it, you'll eventually have to log in. I'm going to do that now. Okay, so now I'm logged in and you can see some other lists that I've created, a want to read list and a dragons list and so on. If you know what list or what you want it to be called and you want to create it from scratch here, you can. You just click the add list, the little notebook with the plus sign. If you have a list you want to delete, just do the notebook with the minus sign, and you can arrange your lists just like you can arrange search results, basically. You can also, these little couple columns of dots, you can click and drag those if you want to manually rearrange them for some reason. If I go into dragons, I can do the same thing within my list. I can also, once I've created a list, if I want to select all or some of them, I have some options. When I go to select an action, I can copy the items in this list to put in another list. So basically a copy paste. I can delete items I want removed. I can email this list either to myself or anyone, a teacher, a student. You can move items from this to another. So instead of copy paste, it's like you're not copying, you're just moving them to another list. And then finally, you can print a list. Here's what that would look like. And this is essentially what it will look like in an email if you emailed that list to yourself or someone else. So I'm gonna close out of that. So that can be pretty cool. Now let's talk about how to make a list. So again, from here, I can just go ahead and search. I'm going to search unicorns because I also like unicorns. And again, I can sort or narrow my results however I like. But let's say I'm like, well, I like all of these items. So I'm just going to click select all records. One thing to know about this, when you click select all, and I know it says select all records, you're only selecting all the records on that page. You're not selecting all of your results. So if you want to select all your results, you have to go page by page. I am so sorry. I cannot change that for you. It's unfortunate, but let's say I want this first set of results for my list. So I've selected all of them, select an action. And again, I can email just this first page or print it for myself, but I'm going to add it to my list. Now, right now, it's going to default to dragons because that's my first saved list at the top of my list, I believe. I can make that my default forever, but what I'm going to do instead is start my own unicorns list. So I'm going to choose temporary list, click add. It'll say, hey, these items were successfully added to your list. And I'm going to go back up to my list. And you'll see here the temporary list. This is always here. It's kind of just a landing pad for lists until you put them into ones with a specific title. And I'm going to create a list for unicorns. I'm going to create, and see, I'm still on my temporary list here. I'm going to select them all. And instead of copy paste, I'm going to cut and paste the thing that I could not remember earlier. I'm going to choose move. I'm going to move it to unicorns. So now there's nothing in my temporary list. And when I go to unicorns, here we are. Does anyone have question? Oh, one thing about lists, and this is another apology I have to make for you. This generally is a really cool thing to be able to do. I don't want to downplay that. The one problem is you can't rename your lists. once you've made them. You would just have to create a new list and change the name to whatever you want, and then move your items that way. Does anyone have any questions? Sounds like no. Does anyone have any projects in mind for using these lists? Or is it mostly, for displays like on holidays and things, class projects? Any holiday, yes. Agreed. Same with public libraries. It can just be an easy way to do it. And just know if an item gets discarded from your collection, that record is removed from your collection in the system. It'll automatically be removed from your list. It'll automatically be removed from any permalinked or permalink search or RSS feed. It's updated just like because it's part of the catalog. Collaborative projects. Very cool. Excellent. One last thing I should do is, could one of the high schools link to their OPAC homepage? So I'll just show you the ability to place holds online. Or one of the system administrators could do that for me. Oh, you guys are so fast. Thank you, Alice and Haley. I appreciate it. Oh, this is so cool. Look at your logo. I haven't seen all the logos, so I am so impressed. Okay. All right, so this is one of the high schools. Billings West. Excellent. So if I just say, oh, okay, this item looks great, just as an easy thing to view here. When you're a high school student or you're on the high school page, you can place a hold. For me, because I'm logged in and I'm an elementary student, I have the elementary student profile, it's not going to let me do it. But if I was a high school student or a staff member, for example, with the privilege to be able to place holds online, I'd be able to do that here. And the same thing would happen if I go to my lists. And again, I know you can't see it here because I'm an elementary school student. Oh, wait, actually, looks like I can. You can place holds on those items. And again, this is just for the purposes of showing you via training. It's not something that your students will be able to do, but it'll allow you to place holds if you want. So that can also be good for you as teachers, right? If you want, or for a classroom, you can have a teacher who's not in the library very often, maybe send them email them a list and let them know, or send them a link to a search and say, hey, you can place holds on all these items if you like. So I don't know if that makes your lives any easier, but I certainly hope it does. Oh, and by the way, the enterprise, the online catalog that I've been showing you and that hopefully you guys have been practicing with, this is live. So if you did place any holds or create any lists you don't actually want, just remember to, you can delete those or remove any holds. So now I'm going to back out of, again, here's our knowledge base. We have the searching guide here. We also have common tasks, which is what we just went through. Password pin reset, Now what I want to do is just go back to our MSC knowledge base, and I want to talk about the mobile app briefly. Okay. Common app tasks. Now, we have an app that we refer to as the Montana Shared Catalog app. The term for the app through our vendor, Cersei Dynex, is BLUEcloud Mobile or BC Mobile. We'll get more into the BLUEcloud stuff later. But I'm not going to do a whole lot of demo with the app. I just want you to know that the app is here. And if you are a Billings Public Library patron already, or if you plan to be, you have access to this app because Billings is also in the Montana Shared Catalog. So what I'm going to do, you can search for the app by going to your app store of choice. I'm an Apple user. And we have the links directly in that article, or you can just search for Montana Shared Catalog. And this is the logo that you should see. So going here, I'm just going to highlight these screenshots of what this will look like. Let's see. iPhone makes it a little bit easier for me. So you'll have a home screen, and this is very similar to the online catalog in terms of functionality. You're able to search for things you're looking for. We also have book lists that we're going to have some kind of generic book lists that we plan to update semi-regularly. We also have this option to scan a book's ISBN. So if you do that, it'll look like this, and you'll use your phone's camera or your tablet's camera to scan a barcode, and it will let you know if that item is available at your library or any of the libraries in the shared catalog. So that can be kind of a cool feature if you're at a bookstore and want to know if you can get an item for free at your library. There's also nearest libraries where you can find a library near you. And if I scroll down, that's what this looks like. So depending on where you're at, it'll bring up the closest libraries. It will let you know if they're open, and if they're not, when they open. If they're closing soon, you can click on a specific library and it'll take you to those libraries' hours. And similar to Enterprise, it gives you a location, phone number, website, but you can also view the library on the map. So you can also go into your account, which looks a lot like the online account as well. It has your current checkouts, which you can renew. It has your current holds that you can also modify or remove. It lets you know if you have any fines, and I don't know if they have a screenshot of this. Let me see if, nope, they don't. There's also at the bottom of the screen, sorry, I'm not actually showing you the real thing. You'll have the option to view barcode. And if you kind of swipe up on that, you'll automatically have a barcode that, you know, if you're doing a self-checkout or if you need to show your barcode to library staff to have them help you, it's just on your phone. So you don't have to remember your card or you don't have to memorize your number, which is pretty cool. Some other things, we have a link directly to Montana Library to Go or the school digital collection, so Sora basically. We also have links to other state library resources that we thought would be of interest to people. The Natural Heritage Program, it's now the Montana History Portal as opposed to the Montana Memory Project, and state publications. So I know that the app may not be something that you use in your day-to-day work, but I'm showing it to you because it is a part of what you have access to as members of the shared catalog, and it may be something you want to use personally. So just know that that's there. And if you have students or staff who have questions about the app, or if something seems to not be working on it when you're using it, go ahead and open a ticket and let us know. Thank you for sitting through that. I know based on feedback from your colleagues, and this wasn't a huge surprise, that you know, this for school librarians, it's not necessarily something you'll use in your day-to-day work, but it is kind of a cool tool. And we just wanted to make sure you know about it. And I just shared in chat the link to this article on common tasks in the mobile app or the shared catalog app that has some better screenshots that I could have pulled up for you. So what it looks like in your account and doing different things. So just so you know, that's there. And I'm gonna go back to our knowledge base. There's one thing I wanted to pull up before we get started here. In this configuration section, if you just want an introduction to workflows and kind of talking about what that is, if you don't know already, we have information here, but in this table of contents, which is linked, there's a section on how do I log into workflows? And I bring this up because when we're practicing today, we're going to be logged in to the workflows, the MSC's test server for workflows, which means anything we do is not going to affect your live instance of workflows. It's just for practice. So you can skip ahead to this login, and there are two options. So for real-time tasks, and then if I scroll down for training practice, this is what you want it to look like. Now I'll go a little bit bigger here. When you go to log in, so whether we take a break or not here in a minute, let's get it set up so that you're logged into the test server for this next section on copy cataloging. When you double click the workflows icon, you're going to be prompted to, if you are prompted to upgrade, choose not to, don't upgrade. And then when this prompt comes up, you're going to want to put MTSC for Montana Shared Catalog test.crc.net in the IP address. So I'm also going to just copy and paste that into our chat in case that makes it easier for you. And then once you make sure you have the right port and login timeout to be 60,000 seconds, and go ahead and click OK. You're gonna log in, and your login information is also on the login and barcode sheet that was sent out. It'll say workflows, it's on the right-hand side under workflows test. It will give you your library's username and password basically. And I can do that now as well. Okay, so mine's already set to test, so you can see. I have the login for Alkali. What I'm going to talk about next, which can be a little eye glazing for some, unless you're a very avid cataloger, copy cataloger, like some of us on the call, is our bibliographic record standards for the shared catalog. And these record standards and most of our cataloging procedures and kind of best practice have been put together by a group of folks in the shared catalog that we call the Content Management Committee, or CMC. So you may hear that referred to. And this committee generally has pretty good representation of different kinds of libraries, including school libraries, academic libraries, and people who are in different roles at their libraries. So many of them are catalogers, not all of them are. It is just to have a wide swath of representation on the committee so that we make sure to consider for all of our libraries how to make the catalog more accurate and accessible for our patrons as well as staff. And so that's where these record standards and kind of our cataloging best practices come from. And what we're going to be looking at is MARC record standards for permanent records in the catalog. These are things that you want to attach your holdings to. It's not for like interlibrary loans, or we're not doing temporary records. What we want you to do is, if you can't find an item in the catalog, in the shared catalog, and you can't find an item using SmartPort, then we're just going to ask you to wait a little bit to see if it gets imported or cataloged eventually, and then you can attach to it. Now, our record standards live in a couple of places. And so here we have our record standards for permanent records, and they are here just in a bullet point list, which is not too shabby. They also live in, pardon me while I look up an article. See how great this is? Just looking up articles. Let's see. Possibly copycat. I think it's searching SmartPort. So we're going to do the catalog and searching guide. This is another thing we're going to jump into here shortly. We have a cataloging searching guide that covers searching in workflows versus searching in SmartPort. Don't worry about this. We'll have all your properties set up. Okay. Now here's what I wanted to show you. Oops, pardon me as I readjust. This is the same list of our record standards in a chart form, which I find a little bit easier, and I may just copy and paste this over to the other article, but it gives you the fields that we like to see as well as what those might look like. So the OOO fields, or the leader fields, this is just a condensed version of the fixed fields that live at the top of a MARC record. When you're looking at that in SmartPort, it will be indicated by the third character. We want either a capital I, a K, or an M is acceptable. And we will look at examples of this. I just want to walk through it right now. There's also the 001 field, or the key. This should be your OCLC control number. That'll appear later in the record as well. And you'll know it's an OCLC control number because it'll have lowercase OCM or OCN and then the number. The 007 field, a lot of your records probably won't have this unless the record is representing an item that is not a regular book format. This is if it's a large print format, if it's audio-visual. So it could be a book on CD or a DVD or a Blu-ray, as well as book kits, for example. Those will have different content. These will have 007 fields, and that is really important because we want folks to know what the format is of an item that they're looking at. In the 10 field, the Library of Congress number is great. And then O20, we have our ISBNs. You may see multiple O20 fields because some items have multiple ISBNs. In the 035, again, the OCLC control number repeated, only it has this weird little googly-eyed looking OCOLC than the number. We like to have, pardon me, Library of Congress, in shorthand, it's DLC in preferred as our cataloging source. The 1XX fields is author, 245 is title, 260 publication information. A lot of this stuff will be more familiar to us looking at records. Also, the 3XX fields that we need to see are 33X, 337, and 338, because this indicates that the record was either created or updated to follow RDA standards, and additional fields when applicable. So if an item is part of a series, it'd be great to have a series statement. We want some good subject headings. There might be a contents, kind of a description, AR levels, any information that's going to enhance patron searching. So just know that this is one place of a couple places that our record standards live. And a lot of this is, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of text coming at you right now. But if you think about it, a lot of it makes sense. We want it to come from a good cataloging source and have a lot of entry points for people to search for that record, as well as records like it, if they want to browse. So just know that this is here for you to reference as you get used to copy cataloging in the shared catalog. A lot of our records are excellent records. We have, several, especially the bigger public libraries, have designated catalogers. That is their entire job. And they can do some original cataloging as well. So a lot of our records in the catalog are very good. But that doesn't mean all of them are as good as we would like them to be. There may be duplicates of bibliographic records where they're meant to be describing the same item, but like maybe one record looks a little bit better than the other record, or a lot better. So this is just to help you choose which record would be the right one to attach to. I mean, we have so many libraries in our system that we're bound to have some less than ideal records in that system as well. We're constantly working on cleanup for that, but going forward, we just want people to make more solid choices when it comes to attaching to records already in the system or importing records using SmartPort. Okay, so one thing we can do, knowing these requirements, if I go back to workflows, I'm going to go to the cataloging module, call number and item maintenance. And I'm going to kind of cheat here. What we can do is just, if you look at, if you have your barcode page handy, you can just type in, scanning might work, but if you want to type in an item ID from your barcode page, I'm just going to pull one up here for alkali. So here I have the bibliographic record for Thomas A. Edison, world's greatest inventor. Here I have the fixed fields as well as the fields down here. So you'll see we have in the 001, we have our OCLC number, OCM. We also have, let's see, what else just jumps out at me right away. We have, you know, the O20, ISBNs, we have author, title, and kind of our statement of responsibility happening in the 245, publication information in the 260, the physical description. And here we have the 336, 337, and 338, letting us know that this is just a regular text volume. We have a little bit of information about the book, and we have some 600 field subject headings and so on. So, you know, this is also the 040 field. This record was originally created by the Library of Congress, and we have the OCLC number here again in the 035 field. I mean, this is looking pretty good. So this would be an item worth attaching to if it describes the item you have in your hand. Oh, yes. So thank you, Alice. Alice and Courtney are the original cataloging, it looks like kind of the original cataloging team for the district on an as needed basis. And it is still preferred that they handle that. However, if they, for some reason, you know, would like Courtney or Alice, if you end up having a question, you are more than welcome to open a ticket as well, of course. So thank you for correcting me on that. All right, I'm just gonna return to our search here and call number and item maintenance. So when you are searching in the catalog for the purposes of copy cataloging, for the most part, although I know a couple of the folks on this call handle original cataloging as well, you're going to be searching in call number and item maintenance. That's right at the top of the common tasks in your cataloging module. So I know that when we're cataloging, or I guess I should only speak for myself if there are any incorrect cataloging procedures demonstrated during this training, that's purely my fault. And the system administrators will jump in. But I know typically when we're copy cataloging, you may just be scanning a book's ISBN to see if it comes up with an item that's already in the catalog. And that's not a bad thing to do. Just know that when you are searching the shared catalog, if you can't pull anything up with an ISBN number, I recommend searching a couple other ways just to make sure that before you go to SmartPort that you've done a good job searching in the catalog itself. So the two other ways I would recommend might be a browse title search or a keyword title search. So yeah, just remember to search at least two different ways before resorting to SmartPort. And as I go through this, let me just say, pardon me, I'm going to close this one. That, again, this is in our searching guide for searching workflows. This one I focus more on browse searching by title or author and also narrowing those searches, but just know that what I'm going to cover is here in the help desk. Everything I'm covering, there should be a corresponding article in the help desk, and I just want you to be aware of that. So let's move that out of the way. Pardon me. So, okay, I did an ISBN search for a book and it didn't work. So now I want to do a title search, but since it's not going to be an exact search, which is what ISBN or item ID defaults to, I'm going to change it to browse. So why I like browse searches is, one, I am a browser. Oh, I just saw in chat, we previously didn't have a way to search ISBN and call number and item maintenance. So this is a nice feature. Great. Yeah, it can be pretty nifty. When doing browse searches, because I'm a browser, I like to think of it as, okay, now I have the whole shared catalogs resources at my disposal, and I can put them in order alphabetically by title and just kind of go down the list, right? That's kind of how it's set up. So the cool thing about browse searches is you can just put the exact title in there. For example, The Catcher in the Rye. Do a search, and here for, that exact title, I have this many hits, so 15 records associated with this hit right here. And that's great because if I want to keep looking at different options for records, I can just kind of scroll and it goes alphabetically by title. So you can narrow it down that way. This one that's in all caps, I believe, is probably some sort of interlibrary loan. But here's an example of what not to do. Don't attach to this record. So if I go back here, we'll say, okay, I don't want this book. Maybe I want, something I should highlight actually over here. We have series statements that appear. We also have a column on additional info, which will let you know if an item is a regular text volume. Perhaps it is a book on CD, so an audio disc. And you may also see Blu-ray or DVD here. You'll also see large print sometimes, or the accelerated reader information. This is sort of like a, how do I explain this? Not every record is going to have this additional info. As you can see, there's some blank slots here, but we're trying to get it to the point where everything you'll see will have either, volume, audio disc, DVD, whatever, going forward. Some of these items that were brought in a long time ago, we're just kind of doing better as we go forward. So you can narrow down which records you want to look at based on, this additional info. And I don't think that's something that was turned on in your system before. So hopefully you find it helpful. So for example, I can then go to the description. I can look at my information here. Let's just say I think this is a good record to attach to. If I go to call number and item view, move this over a little bit, I can see that, hey, a lot of libraries are attached to this. I know that it looks like you guys are on the bottom here for now, but hold on. When I go to modify, again, it'll come up with my bibliographic info. I go to call number item. Oh, I think you guys should appear at the top if you have any holdings. Is that correct, Amy?
On production, they are. I have no idea why it's not working on test.
Okay, so
but yeah, they should show
don't
up
worry about this. Billings School District 2, if you guys have any holdings already on a record, you will appear on the top here. Right now, it looks like one of our sharing groups within the consortium, the partners libraries, is at the top. So, you can close these if you want. Obviously, there are a lot of them on this record, but you guys should be at the top. So what I'm going to do is, if I want to add my own call number and item to this record, I just do add call number. You'll see I'll be prompted to say, oh yeah, this is the library I work at. Boop, boop, boop. And some of these defaults will come up. So right now it's defaulting to the call number of I think the item I had highlighted before hitting add call number. So you'll want to make sure to adjust your call number accordingly. Class scheme is Dewey going forward. You are not using your alpha numeric option. And that is something that has been updated in batch by the system administrators, so you shouldn't even have to worry about it. It's just going to be Dewey. You don't even have to select it. It has my library listed automatically. I recommend waiting to put your item ID barcode in last, because once you scan that number, it'll do like a hard enter. It'll save what you have so far. And while I know all of you are much better copy catalogers and original catalogers than me, when I worked at a public library, the first couple of times I scanned this first, and then I got kind of confused to where it was at, or I would forget to put in information. So the first bit of information here is your item type, which will look a little different than what you're used to, but item type describes how an item circulates. And I know sometimes people have an item type that looks more like the format because maybe all your books circulate the same, or maybe all your DVDs circulate the same, what have you. But in the system, item type, it's more easier to understand if you think of it as how an item circulates. So you would choose your option from here. Maybe it's 14-day, what have you. Okay. Then you'll choose the home location for the item. I think a lot of you are going to be using stacks, although you may have a professional collection as well, or it's reference. And if it's reference, it sounds like you guys don't circulate a lot, if not all of your reference materials. So in that case, if it's a reference item, you'd want non-circ and whatever the home location is. Okay, item categories. The important thing about item categories, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about user categories, these categories are for statistical purposes. So this is what you enter in here is what you're gonna see later in our BLUEcloud Analytics, or like data and analytics tool. So item category 1, for example, is format. I would just put regular book for this one. Item category 2 is audience. For your elementary, and again, things are a little bit different because I'm on test, not the production server, but we have 4 audiences for you guys. I believe that when it comes to the elementary schools, you're likely only going to have the options of early and juvenile.
I think we actually, I'm sorry we didn't get this updated on test. I think we actually have left it as early and juvenile is all that's in there, and everybody else is going to leave it blank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, rent any.
Gotcha. Thank you, Amy. So I apologize. So just the elementary and middle schools will have early and juvenile, correct? Or just the elementary?
Yeah, because they need it for the kids catalog.
Right.
And so we left it, I think, under the Career Center too, because they have some younger stuff.
Okay.
I feel like the others, we might have just made them blank.
Okay. So if it's not an option for you, it'll be grayed out when you log in on the test server. So just be aware of that. Item category 3 is your genre. And 4 is not an option. Category 5 is the funding source, basically, for your item. So we have all these options here.
Oh, Kylie.
Yes.
To interrupt you again, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The last day of training at the beginning of the month, they decided they wanted to have foreign as an option in Cap 4 for right now, so that they can have the link on the side.
Okay.
So I will make sure that's added to their drop down, because I think now that you have shown that, I think we decided that and we added it to the items, but I don't think we added it to their drop downs. So.
Okay. Well, basically, if what will happen is if as a district it was decided that, your library would have access to a certain item category or not, that will be reflected when you log in. If you don't have access, it'll be grayed out. If you think you should have access, but you don't, open a ticket and let us know. So it defaults to number of pieces 1, and you folks have been really great about entering your prices. It sounds like you're all familiar, but it was recommended during the in-person training that, round up. You don't have to put like $4.98 in there, or whatever. Just round up to an even number. And then you can go ahead and save. Just to show you what this will look like, I'm just going to put auto in here to automatically generate. I'm going to click, let's see, since I am logged in as an elementary library, let's just say this is juvenile. I know this is incorrect, but bear with me here. We'll say fiction. Maybe it would count as nonfiction because it's one of those things, but and this was paid for by the district. Great. So we'll just say $20 and I will click save. Okay, so here I am right here at the top. I just saved this item. Great. Now, one thing I want to talk about before, I know I kind of went right from searching into adding items, but that's just kind of how it makes sense. I skipped forward a little bit in the handout. One thing I want to point out is how to add or how to enter a call number when the item in your hand is one piece of many that is represented on a bibliographic record. So example, series like your anime. I'm going to actually delete this because I don't want to that on test. Okay. And I'm going to go back to the search. Let's see, what would be a good example of items that you have multiple volumes on one record? Like if you have anime or like a graphic novel. Anyone can
Case
shout out.
closed.
Case closed. Okay. Let's try our browse search, see how that works. Okay, awesome. Very cool. You're not the only ones. Let's scroll down. So the thing is we have our call number analytics work a little bit differently. Here, pardon the scroll. What we want you to do, I'm actually going to modify, and you can see that this is what Billings has done. Just add a call number. Okay, let's say I am cataloging like the 4th volume of this. What you're going to do is put V period space 4 or whatever the number is, because this creates a call number analytic. And what it does is it tells our system, okay, when a user looks up this, this item or this record in the system, when they see it, if they go to place a hold on it, then they'll have the option to place a hold specifically on this portion of the record, this number 4 piece, as opposed to like the number 1, 2, or 3. How you folks have it now is V dot the number with no space, and that just doesn't tell our system anything. It needs to have the space. It also shouldn't be 04 or 04 like that. It shouldn't be number 4, oops, or anything like that. And here is why. Awesome. Okay, if this is already, okay. If I go to place a hold, oh shoot, sorry folks. Trainer problems. Okay, and it says select the item you want to place a hold on from this record. You'll see it starts out, we have volume 1, 2, 3, all of that. If you scroll down to the bottom, it's pulling from all the libraries that are attached to this record in the whole system. And so you'll see that anything that doesn't match the v dot space number is going to end up kind of all over the place. In this case, at the very bottom here. But you can also see if there's not a call number analytic added, there will be a blank space. So it can create a lot of confusion for our users because it's not clear which library has which record. And so we just try to have them all match this format, and then it'll automatically pull that user's library's copy. Does that make sense? Or is it clear as mud? Okay, I see at least one affirmative that makes sense. One thing to know is that we are going to update any of your items that currently are outdated in terms of how they have the volume number listed. We'll update those in batch. It's just moving forward. If you could follow that convention, we would very much appreciate it. So don't feel like you have to go back and fix anything. You do not. That's being handled by the system administrator team. If you do want to at least have on the call number an indication of where an item is in a series, but it's not really on a series record, for example, the Harry Potter series, you can still have, you know, Fic, Rowling, or whatever, number 4 to indicate the 4th book in the Harry Potter series, because items that aren't on series records, like the Harry Potter records, in fact, I can pull that up, they already know which number they're placing a hold on. So yeah, they already know this is number 4. So instead of putting v dot, you know, space 4, you can just put number 4, like that, because that will appear on your spine label, but it won't affect anything in the system in terms of placing holds. So for the browsers like me, who come into your library and just want to look at the shelves and see if you have what I need, I'll know what number in a series is available. So it looks like we have a question. Would you prefer we move forward with our number sign over V for non-serial records? I believe the answer to that is yes, correct, system administrators?
Yeah, so like for series where it's not on a record that describes the whole serial run. If it's just a record that describes the one volume in a series, then that number sign is exactly right.
Excellent. Thank you for the good questions, Haley.
Yeah, did that answer that well enough for you, Haley?
And we will fix things in batch that as we come across them, but if you are in your records and you see one that's not fixed yet, feel free to just change it on your side.
I think we were the only school that was using V across the board. So I think it would just affect us.
Excellent. Okay, so I know I'll go a little bit more into searching, but that's the basic process of attaching and your holdings to a record. Okay. And I saw that there was a little bit going on in chat earlier about item types that looks like that got resolved, or at least they've finished discussing. So now to go back to searching a little bit more. And again, this is in the searching guide. And one thing I want to show you, and this is regardless of the kind of search that you're doing, but if you do a search, for example, Outlander, because I know that's the popular series these days, I'm going to show you not only, kind of the differences between browse and keyword, but also how to narrow the search. So if I just do a search for Outlander by keyword title, it gives me 32 hits. Let's see what it looks like if I do it by browse. And again, we're searching the whole shared catalog, so it narrows it down even further, right? And scrolling, I can kind of pick which season I may be looking for if I'm looking for the DVDs. But let's go back to keyword just to make it a little bit messier, because here we have not only the DVDs, but Outlander Knitting, Outlander Kitchen, everything you could possibly need Outlander. Up here, there is a helper that if you hover over it, it says configure options for the item search. And if you click that, you have these drop downs that you can narrow and not format, I apologize. You can narrow by your item type or item category. So if I narrowed it down to DVD, for example, and I click OK, and then I believe I have to hit the search again just to refresh it, it'll narrow that down further to items that are specifically DVDs. So that is one way to narrow things down in workflows. Just know that if you go to do another search, it does not reset this item helper or this search helper. So you'll need to go back and do all or reset it back to what it originally was. So you don't start thinking you're going crazy. Any questions about that? Is that something you guys have used before? Did you already know about that? It wouldn't surprise me. This is a very, very smart group. So I feel like this group knows kind of about Boolean searching, like Boolean operators and kind of like specific search, hacks, as it were. If you want to learn more about that in terms of searching when cataloging or circulation or enterprise, we have searching guides for each of those. Let's see. One thing I do want to point out, which may have caused you a little bit of frustration in the past, is if you're doing a keyword search, it does look at Boolean operators. So if you're doing like a keyword title search and you have the word not in that search, NOT, then it's going to affect that search a little bit dramatically. So for example, if I want to look up the not so big house, I don't put it in quotations or anything. I'm just going to search by keyword. It's going to give me, you know, looks like this one, it pulled up the one I wanted, which is great. But if you, let's see. If you did it by browse instead, that'll give you even fewer records because it's not looking for records that don't have the words "not so big in house" in the title. And this is always a little bit wonky on test. If I did this on the production server, I may get like over 900,000 results for a keyword search of the not so big house. So just be aware if you end up getting a search with way too many results, just take a look at the searching guides and you can see how you can narrow that down a bit. We are going to discuss attachment rules. Our standard cataloging procedures for copy cataloging. Again, this is in our cataloging section, and we have this section on rules for attaching. So what I'm going to talk about is when the item in your hand maybe differs slightly from the bibliographic record, how do you know whether to attach it or not? And you can cheat and pull up that article, or we can just test your knowledge here. So let me pull over this outline. Ignore this for a moment, please. Sorry for the... Okay, so when it comes to fiction, when should I choose a separate bib record if my item in my hand differs by any of these things? So I'm going to tell you right away that the first three, format, special edition or abridged versus unabridged, and translator, if your item in your hand differs by any of those three criteria, then you need to look for a different record. And this makes sense, right? If you have a book on CD in your hand, you don't want to attach it to the text version of that book. If you have a Blu-ray disc as opposed to a regular DVD, those are two different things. You need certain players for each, so they need to be on different records. Special editions typically have different content in them, acknowledging that they're a special edition. Also, abridged versus unabridged. Those are literally different content, right? So if you have an unabridged item in your hand, you don't want to attach it to a record where the classic, for example, maybe like Scarlet Letter or something. If the Scarlet Letter is unabridged, you don't want to attach it to an abridged record. Same situation with the translator. Different translators, understandably, interpret translations different ways, so the content would be different. Here's some ways that you don't, or some criteria that you don't need to worry about when it comes to fiction. If your item in your hand is paperback or hardcover, it doesn't matter because the content's the same. You don't really have to worry about the publication date, publisher, page number, that sort of thing, regardless of who's publishing it and when, unless it's a special edition. Generally, the item should just be attached to that record. Now, it's up to you and your school kind of policy or practice. If it's picture books, for example, you may want to, and so the pictures take up most of the content of the book. If it's a different illustrator, then you probably want that reflected in the bibliographic record. But if the illustrations aren't really integral to the content, like they're more decorative or there's only a few of them, maybe you don't need to worry if your item has a different illustrator than what is listed. Also, new or different introductions or forwards, that's kind of, that's up to you, depending on how long maybe the new intro or forward is. If it's just like a page or half a page, then you don't necessarily need to attach to a different record. With nonfiction, I didn't even give you other options. It's the same. You need to be aware of your format, edition, and translator. So there's we have some exceptions here when it comes to classics, and there's a reason for this. For example, if you look up a classic record, because we're searching the whole shared catalog here, look at all the options you have to attach to. Now, granted, some of these are books on CD, right? But even among those, we have a lot of different records to choose from. And some of these definitely deserve their own record, but when it comes to classics, because those are always going to be, you know, keep getting published, different publishers. If it's basically the same content, just go ahead and pick the record that it looks like the most people are attached to. This is purely because otherwise there are just so many options, so many records in here that don't need to be. So as long as you think it's good enough, you know, I mean, if someone in one of your classes assigns like The Scarlet Letter, Grapes of Wrath, or Pride and Prejudice, if it's good enough, the student just needs a copy of that to read. It doesn't really need to get too in depth there, if that makes sense. So that's kind of our exception for classics. And again, this is something that the content management committee discussed. So, okay. Audio video. This was sort of a trick question. All this stuff means it needs its own record. So number of items in a set, different format, we've already talked about that. If the item in hand has closed captioning for the hearing impaired, or if it says something about accessibility, like this film is described for people who are blind or have low vision, needs its own record. Abridged, unabridged. Letterbox is like the formatting where you may have like a black strip on the screen before things were reformatted. Widescreen or full screen. Special editions, again, if it has different special features that, you know, take up a chunk of the time, serial publications. And that covers kind of the main things. So does anyone have questions about our attachment rules or record standards or attaching before we get into SmartPort?
No, I don't have anything to add. You think you covered that well, Kylie. And as always, just open tickets if you have questions, specific questions as you're making decisions.
Now on to SmartPort, which I know is everyone's favorite thing. And it's so intuitive. So I just want to point out that in our cataloging searching guide, and again, we have a section on searching SmartPort specifically. In fact, I'm going to pull that up now. And again, we ask, unless you're one of the original catalogers with that experience, that if you can't find a bibliographic record in the shared catalog or in SmartPort that matches your item, you'll want to wait until either that's cataloged by another library or by your original catalogers. So I am going to go to the section in our searching guide that's specifically on searching SmartPort. And again, it starts out talking about preferences. That's not something that you guys need to worry about. So I'm just going to scroll ahead. And now I'm going to go to SmartPort. Okay. Now I believe you go and you choose OCLC, but then it automatically you're connected. Unfortunately, that is not the case for me. So I need to log in. Give me 1 second.
And as Kylie logs in, that will continue to be the case for Billings Schools, as you will click SmartPort and it will enter the password and stuff for you, but we're still working on getting that set up. So
that's something we learned.
A little bit of delay.
That's actually a great thing we learned from your schools when you came in, is that it was possible to kind of auto log in like that for some of us. So, okay. So I'm logged in and right now it defaults to this simple search. One thing, if you haven't already, highly recommend clicking the helper that is change search pane view, where it has kind of the two search panes, one on top of the other. Doing that will give you several more indexes to help with your search. So if you haven't done that already, this can be a real time saver. And just before we get into it, boop. When you have this advanced search option open, we have these search tips. So if you're searching or browsing by author, you want last name, first name, no comma for the formatting. Search or browse by title, begin with the first significant word. And if you get the error invalid search expression near, put the title in quotation marks. ISBN, you want to omit the hyphens, whereas with the ISSN, you want to include it, and so on and so on. Also, there's this document type, so you can narrow it down by format. Oops, pardon me. So document type here, and I highly recommend just bookmarking this page or printing out that little section for quick reference. If you're looking for a book, generally you don't necessarily need to narrow that down, but if you're looking for something like a book on CD, so a sound recording, you can specify that you want the document type REC. Same for, serials or like DVDs, visual material. So this can be kind of a game changer. For example, if I do oops, I do American Gods, a search for that. You'll see I get over 8,000 results. Now, I know I could add my author and more information, but just to narrow it down. Now, if I want a book on CD, bib record, I'll add REC to document type and hit search again. And that already brings me down to less than 500 records. So, if this isn't a hack you've used with SmartPort before, highly, highly recommend. It's definitely been a life changer for me. So I'm going to do name it Neil, just add that. Here we go. So if you're looking at your results, you highlight and click display. You can move through your list using these arrows, going one by one, or you can go to the very end. I generally don't mind having this in the formatted view. So instead of the field numbers, I get a description of what the field is. But if you prefer to just see the numbered fields and their indicators and the information like that of the MARC record, then you can change the formatting like so. Okay, so let's say that, again, I don't mind having a capital I in the OOO field or the leader, the fixed fields here. That's an OK record. Here we have an OCLC key number. Let's just say, okay, this record looks good. And I decide to capture it, meaning I decide to import it into the shared catalog. This will probably automatically come up. Just go ahead and click OK. It's just your preferences and match points that we already have set up. Now, I know there are two different errors that we tend to run into when you're importing records using SmartPort. One is the call number must be unique for create. So if I just say OK, and then it actually comes up with a slightly different error that a matching record was found in the shared catalog on a title with this control number. So if you end up copying that number, then you can click OK, and instead just
You're doing the title control number?
Yeah.
I always get it from that control tab.
Oh, that's so much smarter.
always,
Right. Sorry, you guys.
Go
to the control tab from the record you're looking at in SmartPort. It's title control number, so it needed the 0 there. So I'm just going to add that. Now you click search. And here's the record that you would have overridden if you had decided to bring it into the shared catalog. And the problem with overwriting, if a record's already in here, is that you may lose some enhancements that someone else, especially the big libraries like Bozeman, Billings, Missoula, may have made to the record that are improvements to the record. So generally, if the record's already in here, don't overwrite it. Just find it using the control number. So that's to help you sort of navigate being in an even bigger system, a bigger pool of records to choose from. If you did decide to bring in a record, but if the only record or error you get is that the call number must be unique, you can just change the call number temporarily. If you can change the call number to what it's going to be in your system, and if that's still not unique, just add like an X at the end or something to make it unique enough to import it in, because the call number is one of our match points, right? And then once that record has been imported in, you can update the call number accordingly. So this covers.
Sorry to jump in. I think it was in your other article too. We often have it in both places.
Yeah.
Stand out well.
Perfect. So this is the searching guide, and here are the errors and what they look like and how to handle that. So if the call number already exists, please specify a new one, and that can just be your call number with something a little extra added. Then you can just update it when you pull it up. I'm going to back out of SmartPort here. There's something I want to talk to you about when it comes to your spine labels. So it sounds like some folks, just type them into a Word document or use even a typewriter. There is a way to set up a report template in workflows where if you want to print the spine labels in batch, for example, maybe you have an Avery whatever sheet of labels, and you want to print a sheet at a time, we can set that up for you with the margins the way they need to be, the call numbers the way they need to be, and so on, so that you can run the report, and then scan your items that you've cataloged, see a print preview of your label sheet, make any, updates that you need to, and then print that off. There's also a way for us, if you have a label printer that, prints as you go, like one at a time, we have a way to set up a template for that. Is that something, if that's something any of you would be interested in, please open a ticket, because we would like to set that up for you instead of sorry, don't look at that. We can set that up for you. Awesome. Great.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. We've gotten a couple of your schools have already been doing that. And so when you open a ticket, just include like the Avery number, 8160 or whatever that is, the sheet number, because I can get the measurements if I have that. And if you do anything like Don, he had a wide label and would lengthwise and would do like 2 call numbers per label, and because he just had a bunch of the sheets and wanted to use them that way. So if you do anything different like that, just include that in the ticket as well. Yeah. And then we'll get the report, this template, the spine label template, and then the report set up for you. And Kylie's showing the article. Yeah,
so this article is if you were to felt like you had to do it by hand, it just kind of shows you, it walks you through the steps of how to run the report. So you would schedule it, you click the schedule reports, and then there would be a templates tab where you could select your library's template. And then again, just follow these steps. Basically, you'll be scanning your stack of books that you just cataloged and barcoded. So you'd scan the barcode and then run the report, and it would give you a print preview of like a list of all your labels and how they look. So one thing to keep in mind though, is if you notice a typo when you're looking at your like print preview and you change it in the print preview, you also have to change it in the record. It won't automatically do that for you, which makes sense if we think about it. But if you're moving really quickly and just getting your work done, it's easy to forget. I certainly have. So also, if you have, I don't know, a half sheet of labels or not a full sheet, there are buttons at the top of the print preview screen for the labels of, you can start from a certain label, start printing from there, or so you don't have to waste your label sheets. I know that can be a real pain. I want to talk about discarding versus deleting and modifying items in bulk. And then I can get your guys' feedback on whether or not you want to talk about transferring records right now. So, okay, I'm going to go back to the cataloging screen. Here's our cataloging section. And down here we have discarding versus deleting records. And I believe when we did the training in person, that what we do is what you folks have already been doing of when to discard versus when to delete, but we just have it written down here. When to discard your items. So if the item you're removing is your library's last copy, which means you'd need the change to be reflected in OCLC, you want to discard. If a replacement for the last copy, described above, doesn't match the bib record because of our attachment rules, then you should discard the old last copy, right? If you're not sure, just go ahead and discard, but you want to make sure to delete if you're removing an extra copy from your item's holdings. So if you still have copies left, then you can just use delete because OCLC just looks at your, the title level bib here. If your replacement for the last copy still matches the bib record that the original item was attached to, so like the audiobook has the same narrator, same length, blah, blah, blah. Once you've received your replacement copy, you can just add it as a copy to the bib record and delete the old item barcode. Okay, and if you're removing like a brief record, which you'll see some of those in the catalog, I don't know if there will still be brief records that you guys had created prior to joining, but if you want to remove that, you can just delete it because it's a brief record, it's a local record that was never submitted to OCLC, so you can just remove it. Do you already know how to discard items or delete them?
As you answer that in the chat, one of the changes from your system to our system is that your old administrators used to do that OCLC upload and remove the discard items at the end of the year. At the MSC, we do that monthly. So the things that you mark discard will come out of the system more quickly, but we do have a couple of reports that Kylie will show you later that give you counts and lists and things like that. So
I'm just going to pull this up. This is just the last record that I looked at. And if I were Bozeman and I was looking to remove this item from the system because it's my last copy owned by my library, I'd want to discard instead of deleting it. And to do that, oops, sorry. I want to wait. Oh, it probably won't let me because of who I'm logged in as. Sorry. What I would do is change the home location to discard, correct, Amy?
right.
Yeah. And then you'll see the little S appear there. So it seems like I'm guessing that's something you all have done. However, one thing that I think actually all of the librarians that we trained in person were new to is this global item modification wizard that's in your cataloging module, and it's under the item maintenance toolbar. So if you open this, let's say when you would use this is if you have maybe a whole cart or two, of books that you want to discard, then you can say, okay, whenever I scan an item, I want its home location to be changed to discard. So I'm just going to type one in here for an example. And here's what happens. It says, okay, this Thomas Edison book is previously its home location was stacks. Now it's been modified to discard. And I can just keep scanning books and it will list all the books I've scanned up here and it will let me know that each one, what was modified. You can also modify other things. Maybe there was a handful of books that you discarded by accident. You could always change that back to stacks, I think. Yes, this one previously was stacks. So I could scan it again and it would modify it from discard back to stacks. But maybe there's something where, I don't know, you needed to update a bunch of books by certain item categories, right? And you could do those all in batch. That it is nice and helpful. So that was the main example I had for modifying items in bulk. However, if and this doesn't just need to be when it comes to like discarding items. If you are taking on some sort of project, like you're doing an inventory, for example, please open a ticket and let us know if you have some kind of project where like maybe a lot of batch changes need to be made, or you're just curious if that's something we can do on our end, we can let you know. Because if you have like, 20 carts of books, maybe that will take less time for us to discard in batch than for you to scan things. It's sort of like a scale issue. It just depends on the time we have available, as well as like how much time and effort it would take for you. Sometimes, I mean, Amy and the other administrators have this magic power of like writing lines of code, and then things that would take you or I like hours to do can happen in minutes. So I don't want to make promises that we can't follow through on, but sometimes if there's a big project and you want to just ask if there are ways that the system admin team can help you, please open a ticket, because sometimes they can. Okay, we have a question. Do we have to make sure it's the last volume of a title, or will it delete the item properly if there are 3 copies, for example, and we want to only delete the 1 copy? So if you want to delete the copy, you can just go here and you'll be able to modify. I can't modify this because I don't have any holdings on this record, but you will have the option to delete it, and you can just do that. Yes. Does that answer your question, Kimberly? So not use the batch option then. I don't think you can use the batch option for deleting items. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have people ask that question. So the only issue is if you set it to home location discard, we will pull the holdings out of OCLC. So if you have 2 copies still, they won't show up in OCLC, but we know that stuff changes and sometimes stuff slips through OCLC. So every 2 or 3 years, we do a full refresh of our OCLC holdings. So if you accidentally get one in this batch change that had some extra copies and we end up pulling your OCLC holdings off, they'll get put back eventually. So I mean, in the perfect world, you would check them all and it would be like, if it's copy 4 and you have 3 other ones, you would go and hit the delete button. But sometimes they flip through and it doesn't break anything. It's just your OCLC holdings won't be perfect. And I don't think any of our OCLC holdings for any library have ever been perfect. So.
So if you have a whole cart of books that you'd have to pay attention. Yeah, if some of them are eligible to discard, I would separate those and use the global item modification to discard. But if they're to delete, I think unfortunately you'd have to go into the record and delete them. But like Amy said, if you err on the side of just discarding them all, eventually the holdings you still have will show up in OCLC. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for bearing with us, Kimberly. I know we when I worked at a public library, it was just like carts everywhere all the time around my desk. Great. Okay. Any questions about global item modification or batch change requests? For example, if you're doing an inventory, and I know a lot of schools tend to do that at right before the summer, which we applaud you, by the way. Some libraries never do an inventory, which is not recommended. But if you plan to do an inventory of your whole collection, for example, definitely open a ticket. And we have an article on this. Questions we'll ask you, because we as in the system administrators can set it up so that any of the items that are currently checked out can be automatically inventoried, or if you want to go section by section and let us know when you're done with each section, we can tell you which reports to look at in BLUEcloud Analytics to see if you missed anything. There are some cool things that we can do on the back end to hopefully make the work a little less for you. So keep that in mind. Oh, I'm glad you think the modify item, global item modification is a good tool. We've found it to be as well. Okay. Modifying items in bulk, discarding versus deleting, spine labels. When you're doing your cataloging, have folks, do you tend to need to transfer items? For example, if you miscatalog something, do you tend to just like remove it from the wrong record and put it on the correct record right away? Or do you use the transfer tool? Is that something you've seen before? No transferring. Okay. I'm a little, and I'm happy to have the system administrators weigh in on this. Transferring, there may be instances where since you have joined the shared catalog, there may be records that did not match. So holdings, and that's not a bad thing. You could have holdings that other libraries in the system don't have. So those are valid records to have in the system, which is great. Sometimes, for whatever reason, maybe a record that was in your system doesn't have all the match points that we typically look for, or it's not quite up to our record standards. We'll give you a list to review, and that might be designated folks, that might be original catalogers, I don't know. But you can transfer your items from the old bib record to the new bib record without losing any of your circulation statistics. So the only thing is, it's not hard. It's just like several steps and can be kind of confusing the first time you're doing it. And it's not something that you use often. So I would lean towards, if you find yourself needing to transfer items because you want to retain statistical info or like circ info, then open a ticket and we can give you the instructions. They're also in the knowledge base, but I don't know if it's something we need to add on after.
I think, Kylie, I agree with you. Like right now they can just get used to being in the new system, and we'll check in with probably with Karen and Andy and Dawn
awesome.
in a couple of months to get their review list to them and get them started, and we can send them the article then. And
okay,
I think the article has a little video, so
yep, we have instructions. There's an article. I just want you to know that that is an option that is available to you. So since we're already logged into workflows, I'm going to exit out of these. I'm going to go to the circulation module. And I believe yours will look something like this, if not exactly like this. In your common tasks, you'll have check out and check in. Don't worry about find free discharge. That is generally something our public libraries that fine may use during certain times, like if they have a readathon or like a fine forgiveness program, they use it for that. But you folks don't fine for late items, so you don't need to worry about it. And it's no longer written as discharge. We changed it to check in for you. You also have options to renew things, bill users. if any of you have a book drop, you can check in with the book drop check-in and so on. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is your registration process, which is different than some of our smaller schools where everyone gets added manually or registered manually. And we know that for your school district, the registrations are handled, let's see, in a user load, which Amy is going to explain because she's discussed it with your local tech folks and what this is going to look like.
Yes, so the user load process is going to look pretty similar to what you had before, where your IT will pull an export out of Power Schools and send it to us, and it will get loaded into the system. There are a few changes. We are hoping that we'll be able to set that up to be more frequent. It sounded like it was maybe quarterly or every other month or something in your old system. We are working with Cersei, and we're really hopeful that we'll be able to at least do it monthly, possibly overnight with automation. So we're still working on that part, but it will be more frequent than in your old system. The other thing we had to change is because we are a much larger system, and so you had just your students, we have 350,000 patrons. The user ID the card number had to be longer to be unique. So like on this screen, the alt ID will be the student's ID number from Power Schools. And if they were less than 8 digits, it sounds like all the new ones that are coming out are the 100 and they're 8 digits. The older ones that are shorter, we added leading zeros to those. So if they were 5 digits, they have 3 zeros on the beginning. And then in the card number field, we will have that student ID, but it's going to have a prefix on it of 2062, and then some number of zeros and the alt ID. So just so that it's unique in our system. And for the elementary schools, you can still just replace that card number with your stickers, your barcode stickers that you use, if that's what you normally do. Don said most of you do that and make the little cards that you use per class. You can just replace the card number field with that, and then the alt ID will stay there, student ID, and we'll use that for the matching for updates. For the middle schools and high schools, it sounds like your students are know to just type their numbers in. Right now, when you go into checkout, you might need to use this user search helper and change that index to alt ID and then have them type in there. And we can help you set that up as a default pop-up that happens every time you go in here. But we are working with Cersei because the alt ID doesn't search in the card number field. We're checking with Cersei to see if that's something we can change so that you wouldn't have to have this extra pop-up. But I have not heard back from them yet. So that's a little bit of a change from your old system. It's just the result that we just have so many more users. We need that longer number to be unique. So we might run into, when we're trying to load your users, we don't want them to accidentally not load because a patron at a different library has that same number.
Do folks have questions about, I just pulled my user that I'm going to be using for examples up in the modify user wizard to kind of try and replicate what Amy's talking about. And then I opened the checkout wizard with the search helper opened and the index sent to alt ID. And like Amy said, if you want that set as the default when you open the checkout wizard, we can do that. you can just open a ticket.
And so, Kylie, since you opened that modify user, which thank you, that actually reminded me of two other changes we made in the user load. You used to do user load in the address fields, you had a room and a teacher field, and we are using group ID and department for those. We don't have those address fields. So here on this basic tab, department will have the teacher in the department, and then the group ID will have, I think for the elementary schools, these were set the same for all the students. And at the middle and high school, you had two different sets of information in there. So it's the same information, whatever your loads were, we just moved it to two different fields. And it will still come in the regular student load.
I am just not going to save any of these changes, Amy, because I don't want to mess with
you don't
anything.
You can leave your changes.
Is there anything else that I think it's just our Billings school district libraries on here. Is there anything else they need to know in these other tabs, or are we in terms of like the user categories?
I think that will mostly be handled in the load. One thing that was decided, some of these things you guys at the earlier trainings, the groups talked about them, or Karen and Andrea and Dawn talked about them and made some decisions. I know your students used to have expiration dates, and they get rolled up to be the next year as a way to like clean out the students. We actually took that off. I think if she switched over here, that would show, because we didn't take them off on test. But students and staff shouldn't expire anymore. What we do is we'll just keep track of when they were last active in the system, or as they come out of the system, if they withdraw or they graduate, then we'll clean them up during end of year processes.
Okay.
So they shouldn't be expired anymore if that was a thing you ran into before. I think, the demographics will load in the user load, the addresses field. The only thing that will be coming in, I think, is the email address. And so there's room and teacher and the zip2 field. Those were sort of all CERC workarounds for report sorting for overdue notices. And none of those will be in the new system, but later on, Kylie will show you the awesome new overdue notice options. And so you'll get the same functionality, but better.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I just wanted to make sure. So yeah, thank you, Amy, for explaining that. You definitely know the ins and outs better than I do. If anyone has questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask or open a ticket, as always. Let's see. So I'm just gonna close this without saving. And here we have checking in and out. So if folks would like to go over searching in workflows when it comes to using item search and display, we can. The big takeaway with item search and display is that it's exactly like call number and item maintenance in the cataloging module, except for when you're viewing something, for example, this record, pardon me, you can't modify anything regardless of whether you have holdings on that record or not. It's just for viewing, searching and displaying and viewing. So the same searching guidelines and kind of hacks apply with item search and display as they do with call number and item maintenance. Okay, so let's say, since we kind of understand that, oh, and also I feel like I've had to say this in other trainings before, it is completely understandable if you would rather search your holdings or the district holdings using the online catalog as opposed to searching in workflows. I know that the workflows searching can be pretty overwhelming, especially now that you're in the shared catalog. By all means, I'm not trying to tell you not to search the shared catalog that way, but it's completely understandable if you'd like to use the hack of searching the online catalog. Okay, so for checking out and in, easy peasy stuff. I know you folks know how to do it, but let's just say that I have I'm already, oh, hold on, let me pull this back up. So check out, I'm just going to pull up my training user. And if you are using the search helper here, it will be narrowed to your group. And then you can change the index, like we said, to the alt ID if necessary. Okay, so I have my user pulled up and I'm just going to pretend I have this item in hand to scan. So here we go, checked out. All of this should look the same, just lets you know the date it's due based on the item type, the way that it circulates. And again, just checking it in. This will, look like this. It just lets you know that it should route to your stacks, which probably is not a surprise. However, if you need to check something out and renew it, you can either renew by pulling up the user's account and renew user, or if you have the item in hand, you can renew item. If one of your kids comes up and says, I'm supposed to return this today, but can I renew it instead? You can say, sure, and you can renew that item by scanning the item ID. Just wanted to let you know that those are a couple options that we have. Okay, so checking out and in, renewing checkouts. Now, does anyone have any questions about that? I know it's pretty straightforward, but it never hurts to ask. The next thing that we want to talk about is holds. This is something that the process is a little different than you're used to. So you know that your high school students at least can place holds online through the online catalog and stuff. But I know a lot of you are very kind and it's easier for you to handle holds if you're the one placing them in workflows on your end. So to place a hold, I'm going to close this user's toolbar and we'll go to holds. You just do place hold. I'm going to pull up my training user. And again, I'm just going to use the same item. Sorry to be boring. A couple things to note. It'll default to your library for the home location for pickup. Hold requests, the requests themselves don't expire for a year. That's the default we have set in the system. Now here for the level or range, we have it set to a title hold within your group, your Billings School District group. Don't choose system, only ever go as broad as group. You can also, if you're placing a hold, maybe for yourself, for example, because you have a book you know needs repair when it comes in, or a book you want to look at potentially to replace, you can always change it to a specific copy or in your library if that's easier to place. So I'm just going to place hold. Great. So now I am just going to go to, if I was working at the Alkali Library and I wanted to see which holds had been placed and which ones I needed to fill, I could go to on-shelf items. I would open that, and here we go. It would, you can move these columns around, by the way, but sometimes it makes sense to have call number be the first one if you're going searching. It gives you all this information about the item and as well as the account that placed the hold. So great. Let's say you go searching, this item is on the shelf. Perfect. What you're going to do is you're going to open the check-in wizard and you are going to scan that item. Now, and what will happen is it will let you know, I don't think I have it set up for my test user, but it will let you know that it needs to route or transit to your holds shelf or however you handle that in-house. And you have the option to print a hold slip if you want to set that up. Let us know that maybe has the student's like first 3 letters of the last name or something, so that you can have it labeled when you put it on your hold shelf. And that is letting the system know that you've filled that hold. Now it's just waiting to be picked up by the patron. You do not use this trap holds wizard. That doesn't live there anymore. You also don't use any of these in transit, because if you get a request from another library in your district, it would show up here on your on-shelf items, right? You would pull it, you would check it in, and it would tell you it needs to route to, another library, or it needs to go into transit. And so then you would put it in your bag that's designated for going outside your library to this library or that, right? So all we're doing really is just checking items in. So let's say this item went out to one of the high school libraries. When the patron is done with that item and they return it to their high school library, you would check that item in. And if there aren't any other holds on it at your library, for example, or maybe the next hold is at its home library, regardless, it needs to go back to its home library, and it will tell you that in like the pop-up once you scan it. Once you check it in, it'll say, oh, this needs to go back for a hold, or this needs to go back to be shelved. Either way, it needs to go where it's going. And it will let you know that. And then if it comes back to my library, Alkali, it'll come back in that transit bag or however you handle it. And all I have to do is check it in, because the system will be like, oh, this just needs to be shelved, or oh, this is on hold for someone else. And then you either shelve it or put it back on your hold shelf. So I know that is a big change. How do we feel about that? Do we have any questions about that?
So when we get books from another school, do we also use the check-in instead of the in transit?
Correct. Correct. Basically, you'll use the check-in wizard and it will tell you what to do. So if you get a bag full of books from another library in your district, you'll just you'll check them in, scan it in the check-in wizard, and it'll tell you that it needs to go to your holds shelf, or if it needs to, if for some reason maybe someone canceled their hold right after it was already arrived at your library, it would tell you, oh, this needs to go back in transit because it needs to be reshelved.
Great, thank you.
Sorry. To get those holds labels, do we just email you or how do we get those?
Go ahead and open a ticket. We can help you set it up if you need help. There's also, I think we have instructions on that. 1 second. Let me double check.
Okay.
In our knowledge base. I know I definitely did it at the public library, but sometimes it can be very exciting, you know, to get those things set up. Let's see. Okay. We have receipt printer set up, just regular receipts and transit slips. So we have instructions on how to do that. And I think we might talk about hold slips as well, although I'm not sure. But basically, if you need help with that, let us know. And oh yeah, print hold wrapper slip. So that might be what we need. But regardless, just open a ticket and we can walk you through it.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. You folks are so easy. This is ridiculous. Okay. So that's placing and filling holds. Now, every once in a while, it doesn't hurt to also look at your manage hold shelf. This is probably a new wizard to you. It's here at the bottom of the holds drop down. Okay. And what this does, if you look up at the top here, it's showing us holds that are active, canceled, expired, or suspended. And remember, those are the things that we can do to holds, right? We can suspend the hold, we can it can expire after a year, we can cancel it. And it defaults to having, at least for my settings right now, it also shows the active holds. So if I take that off, and granted, I know I don't have any now, but I could just limit it to holds that possibly need to be addressed, right? Because they were canceled. I could pull those off my hold shelf and check them in to transit them wherever they need to go. Or if a hold is expired, I may want to reach out to a student or a staff member who may have placed a hold a year ago and be like, hey, I'm sorry you didn't get this. Like, I'm ordering a new copy or something. I don't think this is something you necessarily need to use often, but it can be a good way to double check and clean your hold shelf of anything that doesn't need to be on there. And again, you can adjust this to also include your active holds. So yeah, we also have instructions on this, believe it or not. So also, pardon me, I'm going to close out of this. When it comes to holds, you can also just view them, right, by user or, you know, by title or item. You can also modify the holds, just like we were able to do in the online catalog. So right now, here are the things I can do. If I select that hold and click modify from modify user holds, I can change the pickup location or the suspension date if I want to. So just know that that's there. And then if you do change anything, that status those changes will be reflected here. You can also do that if you have the item in hand. You can do it by item, same thing. You can also remove holds from the user account or from the item in hand. For removing holds, sorry, I already talked about that. So there are a couple different ways, just like with displaying or modifying. You can remove by user or you can remove by item. So if I wanted to remove this, just remove it. And it'll say, great. Now that you've removed this hold, you just need to route or transfer it to the stack. So you just need to reshelve it, basically. The item doesn't need to leave the library. And it'll say, okay, this hold was removed. So the next thing I want to talk about is some of those kind of problem scenarios when an item is either missing or it's been lost by one of your patrons. They need to be billed or have a bill paid. So we're going to go over those next. And I want to do this right after talking about holds, because I know when we're looking for holds is oftentimes when we realize that an item is missing. The difference between missing and lost. Missing items are items that should be on the library shelf, but are not. Lost items are lost by a person. They need to be checked out to an account before they can be considered lost. If the items aren't checked out to an account and they should be on the shelf of the library, they're missing, right? If you can't find them, obviously. Okay, so what do we do if we're looking for a hold, but when we go to look for it on the shelf, we can't find it right away, it doesn't appear to be misshelved, all of that. What you're going to do is go down to Special, the Special toolbar, and no, you're not. Sorry. Oh, you guys. You go to the Items toolbar. I apologize. Go to the items and you can mark an item missing. So let's say this item's on hold. The Edison book, I can't find it on the shelf. I'm going to mark it missing. So I, highlight that record. I'm like, yep, this is the item that's missing, marking it missing. And when you hit mark item missing the first time, it's just going to fill this item ID field. It will not automatically mark it missing yet. You have to do that again at the bottom of the screen. So if I mark it missing, it'll say, okay, here's the item ID, the title, and its current location is now missing. All right. Now, if that item eventually gets checked in, which I'm just going to pull it up again. And you say, okay, I'm going to check this item in. I found it. It'll route to wherever it needs to go. So in this case, it'll be the stacks. No one has a hold on it. If there was a hold on it, it would, again, have a little pop-up letting you know that. So lost items are always a little bit more complicated. Let me check out a couple things to my training user. Okay, now I have my training user. I've checked out that item and it looks like I have a couple more checkouts still, so that's great. Okay, so I've checked out these items. There are a couple ways that items can be identified as lost in the system. For example, at the end of the school year, the system administrators send out a survey that will be filled out by, I think, maybe a designated person, or you'll get the survey as individual libraries, but it'll let us know that you want items currently checked out to be marked as assumed lost. And they can do that in batch. It's not something that your local IT does or that you need to do manually. But we know that during the school year, it just so happens that items can be lost well before the end of the school year. So in that case, and some of you teachers laughed at me at the in-person when I said, well, when a student comes up to you and tells you that they lost something, and then there was just like this hysterical laughter, as if, I guess, students don't do that. But if they did, under the items drop-down toolbar again, beneath mark item missing, there is mark item lost. So you could either say you can look it up by the user's account, or because I did mark item lost now, it automatically fills in for me, do you mean this item? So I'm going to click that and say yes, and then mark the item lost. And what will happen is this pop-up will show, and I believe it's something you've seen before. It has the user information, the item information, and the item amount, which is pulled from your record. So if the student has admitted to you they lost the item, but they don't have the money with them right now, you would just say bill user. If they also had the money with them at that time, you could say, you could choose the payment type and then say pay now. If you wanted to, I guess, cancel the bill, meaning you wanted to apply it, but mark it as like forgiven or waived, essentially, you could cancel the bill itself, but the lost item would still appear on the patron's account. So what I'm going to do is just bill the user. Okay. And now if I go to checkout to Paul, you'll get a pop-up letting you know that they have this estimated amount in bills. You can override and check out to them, or you can investigate, which will give you a little bit more information, right? Or you can go to pay bills, which will essentially just open a smaller version of the pay bill wizard. Now, is everyone familiar with that process? Is that new? I think several folks were familiar with marking items lost. For example, if Paul came in with $15, I could either mark it in here, the payment of $15, or I can mark it up here. Just know if you have multiple bills, if you enter a payment here from the top, it'll just kind of apply from like the first payment down. But if you had like multiple books here and only wanted to pay for one of the books, do it by that individual row of book. That's what I recommend. So I'm going to pay this bill. Awesome. And then once the bill's paid, you should be able to check out. If for some reason he loses another book, you can again pull up mark item lost, or, which I know I have it open twice, or if you have his account pulled up in the checkout screen, you can right click on that title and mark it as lost there. Say okay. And the same pop-up will show, right? So there's some options here. We had some libraries during the in-person training, we had put forth the idea that if you have damaged items that need to be replaced, that you just mark them as lost and handle it that way. Whereas other librarians wanted to bill the user for damage, because then the bill would be identified as related to a damaged item specifically. So I don't know if folks have a preference on how to handle that. I think what we're going to do is default to marking damaged items as lost. And if you would rather handle that differently by billing a user for damage, you can open a ticket and let us know. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, definitely put it in chat or open a ticket with us. I also want to show the item I just marked as lost. If that gets checked in, you'll get this warning that, hey, this item was reported as lost or assumed to be lost by the system. You say, okay. And if that hasn't already been paid for, then it will just remove the lost item from the patron's account and they won't have that bill anymore. On the note of missing and lost items and bills for that matter, we have reports in BLUEcloud Analytics, which is what we're going to be getting to next after lunchtime, where you can check to get a list of your library's missing items, where you can get a list of lost items that either haven't been paid for, have been paid for, and so on. You can also see bill types that have been paid at your library if there is more than one kind of bill that you want to have. And much like items that were assumed lost, there are a couple different kinds of lost. If it's an item marked as lost, that'll show up with a status of lost claim because that person came to you and said, I claim this to be lost, basically. If it says assumed lost or lost assumed, that means that the system, no one came up to you to tell you it was lost, but so much time has gone by that the system assumes it to be lost. And that's what the system administrators can set up for you at the end of the year. They can mark items assumed lost for you. If you're high school librarians specifically, we can also set up an additional process that your lost items can go through before seniors graduate to make sure that those get returned or paid for before graduation. Lost items and bills kind of leads into a discussion about notices. Now, previously, notices were reports within workflows. Now, the system administrators have made it so that most of the reports that are handled in workflows are typically handled by them, not our individual libraries, and they're reports that actually make changes to the system. Any reports that are purely statistical, meaning that you're just pulling data from the system to view or getting lists of, shelf lists or notices that need to go out if you need to print them, have them emailed, whatever. All of those are now available in BLUEcloud Analytics. So while we're going to go into those in more depth after lunch, just know that they don't live in workflows anymore. So your overdue notices and such will be in BLUEcloud Analytics. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on before we go to lunch is MobileStaff. Basically, the Montana Shared Catalog supports two apps. The first one we already talked about, which is patron facing, right? That's the Montana Shared Catalog app. That's how we bill it in the App Store, which is for patrons. The other app is MobileStaff, and like the name implies, is for work that staff do at your library. It's not something patrons have access to. And MobileStaff has a fair amount of the functionality that you would see in workflows, though not nearly as much functionality. However, it is good for a couple of things that you may find of interest. Let me just, oops, pardon me, pull this over here. Specifically, inventorying your collection may be of interest. Let me just pull up my cheat to MobileStaff. I don't have the link to MobileStaff on your handout because you need to request access to it if you haven't already. So what you would do is you would open a ticket for the MobileStaff app, and we would send you like an activation URL and key. Whereas because I already got that set up, I'm able to log in. Okay, so when you go into the app, you'll see, much like the toolbars or wizards, all of your like function options are on the left-hand side, and it defaults to checkout. So basic things to know about MobileStaff. You can have it, because it's an app, you can have it on your phone or a tablet, which can be great. You can also, like I have done here, have it in browser mode on your laptop. And the things that I wanted to highlight, we have more information on all of this stuff, your regular search stuff, checking in, renewals, marking items as used, even if they're not checked out, checking an item status, also holds. The thing I want you to know about is the inventory option. So if you have MobileStaff on like your phone or an iPad, and you have a scanner that connects via Bluetooth, then you can use that device and scanner to scan your items in your collection. If you don't have a Bluetooth scanner, I wouldn't blame you. You can always put MobileStaff on a laptop, pull it up in the browser, and have a regular scanner attached to your laptop and scan things that way. Begging your pardon. So if I, for example, just going to inventory. I'm going to inventory this item. Say I have it on, I'm just moving through the stacks with my laptop. I scan this item. And then I get to the next item. And I scan it. It'll scan that for me. And I think because this is probably because of me doing things on test. What will happen once we get you guys going is if you are going along and you inventory an item that is misshelved, it will appear in red and it'll say, hey, you just inventoried an item that had this call number previously, so this item isn't in the right place. And it can give you that heads up So that can sometimes be a nifty tool that you don't see in workflows, right? The other option for MobileStaff, and I believe one of not one of the Billings School District libraries, but some of our school libraries have a self-checkout kiosk that they set up so that it looks, while it looks similar to this, it doesn't have these options of like, it doesn't have access to the rest of the catalog. Folks will just be able to type or scan in their number, and then they can scan their items to check them out. You could also do that. You could also have it so that kids could check things in, but I know that can be sort of a nightmare. So I don't have it set up here for any of your libraries. We would need to create a separate just user account that's specifically like a kiosk mode account, and you would log in with that account and password, and then all it would show is just, for example, checkout, and folks could just scan their items. So if that's something that would help some of you with workflow, just let us know and we can set that up for you to try it. And if you don't like it, we can, you don't have to use it.
Kylie, before you
Yes.
into BCA, we wanted to talk about jalopy.
Oh, yes. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. I forgot to tell you, for the Billings School District libraries, I know that when you had to override something, for example, you wanted to check out a reference material that was non-circulating, and it prompts you for an override, the password for that is now yes. YES, all lowercase, unless it's an override that has to do with holds, then it's the word allow, ALLOW, and I'm going to put that in chat right now. You no longer have to type in jalopy. Okay, so now on my screen, you'll see the login screen for BLUEcloud Analytics, shortened to BCA. Often you'll see that in our help desk. Now, before I log in, I want to say a few things about BLUEcloud Analytics. The blue in BLUEcloud is in all caps, BLUE, and it stands for Best Library User Experience. So if you ever see that written out and you wonder what it means, that's what it means. So the important thing about BCA that you need to know, so it's a reporting tool for libraries in the shared catalog to run on-demand statistics. And as you can see, it's web-based, which means you don't need to download software or be logged into workflows to run it. You simply open your browser, navigate to the login page, then log in. Speaking of the login page, I am copying and putting that into the chat. It is also on your handout, and your BCA username and password is also on your barcode handout below the Workflows Test login. It is case sensitive. If you're not sure where to find that, let me know and we can get that information to you. But as people are logging in and before I log in, I just want to say a few more things that I really want to hammer home about BCA. And that is that the information in BCA is not real time. It's close, but not real time. It uses a nightly snapshot of our system data. So any changes you make in workflows today when it comes to your circulation, your cataloging, and so on, those changes will be reflected tomorrow in BCA. Next, you will not break anything by running reports in BCA because the reports you're running don't affect the system. They're just literally a snapshot. of the system. So when you run a report in BCA, you're just pulling, viewing, and organizing information. That said, any reports containing patron data other than the user ID number will be limited to your library-specific folder in BCA to preserve patron privacy. So reports containing your library's patron data, those can be built and saved in your personal library folder where only your library staff will have access to it. As we go through this training and beyond that, as you begin to dive into BCA a little bit more, and you don't see a report that you need or want, please open a ticket and let us know, because your question could result in a report template that others would like to use. The other side of that coin is that because of that, we have a lot of reports in BLUEcloud Analytics, and it is very easy to become quickly overwhelmed. And so what I like to do is recommend that before you jump into BCA for, the first few times, keep in mind what are the data questions that you have about your library that you want answered. So feel free to jot those down on your handout now or as we go, just to kind of keep you focused on what you're looking for. We try to make it easy by having all these template reports available, because it's basically just plug and play. You'll be prompted for usually just your library, but oftentimes there will be other prompts you can fill in as needed. And, it's just very easy to kind of get diverted into, oh my gosh, which reports am I supposed to be running? Do I need to run them all? The short answer is no. It varies by your library. So, and the one thing here, when you log into BCA, you'll see this giant red M in the upper left-hand corner. Just know that stands for MicroStrategy, which is just the platform that BLUEcloud Analytics is built on. So you don't have to worry about it, but that's why there's an M. Okay, I'm going to type in my username and password for Alkali. I'm going to log in. Okay. Now everyone will log in first to see this screen. And this is just letting us know that we're logging onto the Montana Shared Catalogs BCA server. All right, so here we are. This is the main page of the Shared Catalogs BCA instance. You'll see shared reports, history list, which is not something you need to worry about. That functionality doesn't work well for our consortium, so that button may as well not exist. There's also My Subscriptions. This is where any of your subscriptions, if you save like a personalized view of a report, or if you've set up an email subscription to have a report delivered to you on a certain schedule by email, you can edit or adjust, remove, whatever, any of those from here. But what I want to do first is just go into shared reports. And here we are. Now, this is fairly tame. We try to organize it as well as we can. We have reports on acquisitions. Again, that's not something the Billings schools use, so you don't have to worry about it. We also have reports related to bills and payments. BLUEcloud Mobile, which is our Montana shared catalog app. Circulation, including but not limited to, let's see, you have information for common circulation tasks, so your overdue lists, checkouts, etc. Not to be confused with, and we separated this out to make it a little bit easier, circulation stat reports that generate info about by your item categories, demographics. So if you're looking for like your daily and monthly circ by any of those factors, you can find those here. Collection information. So again, this is a lot of your shelf lists, your collection values, item counts, that sort of thing, as well as collection maintenance. And so when we think of collection maintenance, we're thinking, you know, inventory, perhaps waiting lists to review our collection, items that are marked as missing or lost. We can get all that information in collection maintenance. Information about holds. This is probably of more interest to our public libraries, particularly, pardon me, our sharing groups within the shared catalog. Here is your library, where your library specific folder will be. So when I click into that, you'll see I have my BS2 alkali folder. There's also a more general BS2 folder, which I believe will have reports for your district overall. And if you have any questions ever about if you see different policy names in the shared catalog that you don't know what they stand for, we just have this report in everyone's library folder so that they can look that up if they're curious. Okay, so if I want to navigate back to shared reports, I can do that a couple of ways. On the left-hand side here, you'll see that the breadcrumbs basically are laid out like so. Also up here at the top, I can go back to shared reports. I can also use these arrows if I would like. But for me, I'm just going to go down and go back to shared reports this way. Okay, so we just came out of the libraries folder. We have public library statistics, which is a specific collection of data that we do every year for our public libraries. Serial control and reports specifically about library users that don't include personally identifiable information. So the first thing I want us to do before we jump into reports is, does anyone want to share anything that they've thought of what kind of information they would like to collect about their library? And if not, that's fine, but just feel free to share that in the chat. And if it's possible, we will try to cover that during the rest of this training. Most checked out items. Yes, that is a good one. That was also asked for in our other training, so we'll get to that. Anything else? Oh, one that I want to throw out there is, like I said before we went to lunch, your notices reports are no longer in workflows. They will be here. So they will be in your library specific folder. I'm going to go into mine. And there are two options here. One that looks more like a chart is an overdue print notice. It prompts for your user category 3. And like the description says, it includes name and grade/teacher. and then it talks about what the item information is that's included. There's also a list of overdues, including call number, title, author, barcode, checkout date, due date, etc. And that will also prompt by your user category 3. So let's run this print notice. Okay, this is so cool. So Laura and Mel, two of the system administrators, have worked very hard on this. You'll see that your notices will have your library's logo on them, as well as your library's contact information at the top. And it will list your student, what is overdue, and encouragement to please return or renew them as soon as possible. We had someone in one of the in-person sessions ask about converting this to a PDF or taking a screenshot to upload into Seesaw for parents to be able to see. If that's something that you would like to do, and just know that you can certainly do that. I'll show you how to create a PDF of this, but you also can narrow it down as we add more teachers or as teachers get updated in your student loads. You'll be able to narrow it down by teacher and student, or you can just load all for every teacher or all for a teacher and be able to scroll through and see the different notices. If you have questions about your notices or would like something adjusted or having problems viewing them, definitely open a ticket and we will work with you on that.
I'll just jump in.
Please.
On the notices and the overdue reports right now, they were set up to if the teacher was in department, but if your teacher is in group ID, like Alkali's is, I'm starting to make those changes. So just open a ticket, and we kind of created some of these reports before the students were loaded in. So we'll need to make changes, and that's fine. We expect to and we want to for sure.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And let me see if you would like to, you have some options here in the, I think they call it the hamburger menu these days. If you click that in the upper right, you can print this. You can also export it as a PDF if you would like. So just know that that option is there. I hope folks are excited about the notices. We certainly have been. Okay, I'm gonna navigate back to our shared reports. Also, just to note, like I said, I'm a browser, so I like to search kind of like section by section, but I know not everyone's that way. So in the upper right-hand corner here, we have this little microscope. And if you click on it, you can type, for example, let's see, top circulating all titles, adult items, or they'll have like juvenile, whatever. So if I look that up, it can let me know where to find possibly a report that I'm looking for and where that lives. If it is not a report that you have access to, you won't be able to pull it up. And you can also, if it's easier, just like with our online catalog, we have two views. There's the list view and more of an icon view. And so you can toggle back and forth between those if you would like. Same with what we have here down in the left hand. There's the list view and the icon view. Obviously, the icon view is a little better for me and my purposes in training, but feel free to do what you like with that. Okay, so right, so that was one of the questions we actually had was top circulating items. So if we went to, I'm guessing circulation statistics, is that what we're thinking, folks? Let's see, circulation stats by item collections. That sounds, oh, no, look over here. Top circling titles, items, and collections. And you'll notice we're limited to a certain character number when we do these descriptions. So if you're not quite sure what a report actually does and you don't understand it, just open a ticket and let us know. But this one has reports that display top circling titles and items for adults, juveniles, and the entire collection. Also includes percent to total reports for like collection management. So you can automatically run it for the last 6 months or a custom date range. And this is what I mean when I say, I know there's a lot of stuff here. So you just have to rely on titles and descriptions. But if we look at, let's see, top circulating all items for the last 6 months, for example. Or actually, let's not do the last 6 months, because if we're doing schools, let's do top circulating all titles date range. Sometimes it takes a second to come up with the prompts. So this is what I mean. The reports are basically already set up for you, and then you just have to plug and play. So right now, it's asking me, hey, what's the date range that you want to look at here? And let's do for last year, September 1st. Definitely do not shy away from using the little calendar widgets, because if you enter something wrong, it'll highlight it in red and you'll have to fix it. I'm just gonna copy and paste and we'll do, actually, let's do June of 2023. Okay, so roughly the school year, forgive me. It's been a while since I've been a student. Okay. You can narrow it down further by item type, how the items circulate, or the item collection, which in other words is just home location. And a bunch of different things, but you can see on the left here, you can navigate to those different things, but really the only thing that's required is your library code. So you'll see here the library code, it has your library policy name on the left. Library code. Pardon all the scrolling. Okay, so we have a much smaller library district of an elementary, middle, and high school in Thompson Falls. If you want to move a library or set of libraries over, you can double click on them or highlight one or more of them and move them forward and back with arrows. I'm going to go back up and do these dates. Okay. Okay, excellent. And then at the very bottom left, I'm going to run this report. And we'll see what we've got. Sometimes it takes a minute to run a report. If after running a report you get an error that tells you you have no data, that could be because there was an error, or in the case of if you're trying to look at like an overdue list or for a certain date or something, it may just no longer have any of that data to look at. Okay, so this is limited to the 100 highest titles in terms of circulation for these 3 libraries. So we have Crush, a book on Disney princesses, all of these things, which is pretty cool. And it looks like we have 3 pages total. If you would like to export this, you can. For example, I could go up to Report Home and down here can export, and it gives you options. You can do it as a PDF, Excel with plain text, or Excel with formatting. You can also do a CSV file and more. So for example, if I wanted to do Excel with formatting, meaning the same formatting as what I was just viewing in BLUEcloud Analytics, I can do that. Whenever you go to export or print something, you're going to get this list of options. I want to export the whole report with formatting, and it's going to include the report title when I do that. You can choose to include the filter details as well, if you would like. So I am just going to hit export. And it will automatically go to wherever I designate it to go. I'm going to have mine go into my downloads. We'll do that. Okay, it lets me know when it's done. So let's go ahead and open it. And I may need to move it over to your screen. Okay. And this I would obviously have to go through and extend the, the column headings and all of that, but you'll see here we have it, all of these titles with the formatting. If you decided to do it without the formatting, it would just look like a regular Excel sheet with just the data, none of the colors or white and gray here. And then once it's in Excel, you can format this how you like, rearrange it how you like. So I'm going to X out of this. Not going to save it. If you would like to have a list like this sent to you on a regular basis without even having to log in to BLUEcloud Analytics, you can do that. We can do that by going to Report Home and Subscribe to Email. And when you click that, it'll say, hey, you don't currently have any subscriptions to this report. And then it gives you the option to set one up. So the name of the subscription itself, as it'll appear in your My Subscriptions page, is Top Circulating All Items, date range, and then the date it was run, which is today, and the time. Sometimes I like to just keep the date and time that it was run the first time as part of my subscription name, so I know when I set it up the subscription. That's just my personal preference. And then it has the official report name there. Now you get to schedule a report. This is a bit of a doozy because basically all of Cersei Dynex's libraries that use BLUEcloud Analytics have requested, dates, times, different time zones. So when you click on this, there's a lot to scroll through. So I apologize for that. There's nothing we can do about it. However, if there's a date, time, whatever that you're looking for that you can't find, or for example, you can't find something that when you convert it to Mountain Time makes sense, then open a ticket and let us know because we'll have to request it and they'll get added to this very big list. So if I wanted this on the first day of the month, and I'm gonna say, hey, let's do it at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be 9 a.m. here, then I would choose that. Just a note on setting up your timing, we kind of want to give everything a chance to run and update in BLUEcloud Analytics from like the overnight kind of harvest. So it's best to have everything scheduled by 9 a.m. Mountain Time or later. Just give everything a chance to like settle in and be refreshed from the night before. So I already have an option listed of who to email this to. You probably don't have that option yet, so you could set that up from here. It'll look like this. The address name is actually just either your name or the name of the position, like I've done here, MSL trainer. But if I wanted, I could do my name. And then physical address is actually just your email address because it's an email subscription. So I'm going to choose my email. And don't worry about the device. Just leave that as your physical address. You can add that to your recipients. Oh, I already have that there, so mine technically won't work. But then it'll show up in either your report subscription or just in your list of available contacts, which you can move over. So I'm going to cancel that for now. And we're going to go over that again in a different place so that you can set up, have your email automatically be an option when you go to subscribe to a report. So then you have different options of how to set up this subscription in terms of how the data appears. Just have it in email, but the delivery format is actually where we have more fun. So you can have it in HTML format, you can have it attached as a PDF or Excel plain text CSV. So I want mine attached as an Excel spreadsheet. Now we have file name and subject. The file name, because I chose Excel spreadsheet, is the name of the Excel file. Duh, right? One thing, and it takes forever to get used to, in this little I information dropdown, we realize that there's a little hack here. If you want to have the date auto-filled, you can do percentage date, and that will include the date this subscription was sent to you. So if you save these, if they get emailed to you and you like to download them and save them somewhere, each file name will already have the date in which it was sent to you, so you can tell the difference between which spreadsheet you got when. You can also do the same in your subject line. If you want to just be able to search in your email for a specific report, you can do that as well. For the message, I would just give yourself a little context, or for the person, if it's not you who you're setting up the email subscription for, you might say this report does this, or this is what it's for. If you need assistance, contact, or open a ticket, whatever information you need. If you want to see what it looks like, you can send yourself a preview. Advanced options, I wouldn't worry too much about this, but if you want to have an end date for your subscription, you can do that. And you can just say, okay. Now at the top, it'll say, hey, subscription was created successfully. And if you click on that before it disappears, it'll take you to your My Subscriptions page. You see I have another one set up, which is just CircStats monthly. And that one grabs all the statistics from the previous month automatically and emails them to me. So that's a really quick navigating in, running a report by filling in the prompts, either exporting or setting up an email subscription. That's just kind of the bare bones run through. We have instructions on all of these things, but then I kind of want to have more room for you guys to talk about the specific reports you might want to look at. There are some I'd like to go into in more depth. So while you think about it, I'm going to go back to shared reports and go into collection maintenance. Specifically, I would like to do reports for catalog cleanup. And I know there are also a lot here, but we talked about a few of these things during training. A list of lost items, or specifically lost items that had been paid for. There's also a way to look at all at once your lost, assumed lost, and claim lost items. If something has been missing for more than 3 months, we talked about marking an item missing versus marking it as lost. Let's see, a review list. And I think that's kind of the big ones. But just know that when we talk about items, marking items missing, marking items lost, as you know, those records eventually need to be dealt with. You either want to replace them, or if you're charging for them, make sure they get paid for, and so on. And again, this is something that you could say, hey, I want to send myself this missing for more than 3 months list every month or something, and you could set up that subscription. So the catalog cleanup reports is one that I wanted to highlight for you. Let's see what else. Also the inventory reports. You don't necessarily have to look at these in depth right now, just know that they're here. And if you, which we recommend, if you reach out to us first before you do an inventory, there are some things that the system administrators can do on the back end to save you time and effort. And then we'll direct you to the inventory reports that you can then run to see what items you may have missed when you were scanning. Okay. All right. Let's see, for weeding reports, for example, and sometimes you might see reports, the same report appear in multiple folders, and that's because maybe it meets multiple needs and we just didn't want you to have to always look in one place to find what you need in that moment. So for example, if you would like to say, I want to see a list of items that have never checked out, or I want to see a list of items that circulate so much that maybe I want to check them for wear and tear. Again, a waiting list by your item categories. So that's what you put in when you're cataloging, your format, your audience, so on. Okay, so for example, if I do waiting list never, meaning they'd never checked out, then I'm actually going to scroll down and I will do, just going to pick a different library that's at the top. The Belgrade Public Library. You can, if you would like, enter a beginning and or ending call number to narrow it down of what you're viewing. Just know that if you do that, it works best with numeric call numbers. So if you want all your juvenile like 100 section, you want to put whatever the call number is, but generally J, and then like you can just put 1 and then whatever the ending you wanted. If you think you're missing something, just make sure that it's kind of really basic. Like again, if you know you do juvenile in your call number, but you know some of them may not all fall under juvenile, some might be J, just start with J, and that'll catch them all. The item created date. So you might be wondering what's this, because all you want is a list of items that have never checked out. But the item created date, this allows you to exclude items you've added recently that wouldn't probably have had time to check out yet, right? Or maybe items that have been added in the last 2 years, you just don't want those to be eligible. So like it says here, if you don't want items added in 2021 or later, for example, to appear on this list, then you enter in January 1st of 2021. So I'll do 2022. How about? And I'll run the report. Now, this is for a public library, so keep that in mind. And you'll see there's this little, it says page by item collection, which is home location, and it has a drop down. And right now it's set to looking at the nonfiction specifically that has never checked out. I can change that and I can pick a different home location to view. So maybe my juvenile nonfiction. And that I have 2 pages of. So that's a tool I can use. And then you can say, oh, well, the World Book Encyclopedia, that's okay. That doesn't generally check out. We want to keep that. So it'll give you, obviously these are no charges because it was never checked out. Any questions about BCA generally? I know it's a lot. I will say that if you look in our online knowledge base, we have a whole section on BLUEcloud Analytics that, we're developing all the time. I would definitely start with, the overview, kind of getting started, navigating around. We've done a lot of that. It's sort of, we divided up reports if there's only one prompt versus multiple prompts, saving and subscribing to emails. And then some people are just like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? And so we put together just a very basic core report list. And keep in mind, not all of these reports are right for your library. It's just a starting point. So if you want more recommended reports on like circulation statistics versus catalog maintenance, you can go to each one of those sections and they're really just basic. Inventory dates, waiting lists, bills, if bills are something that you want to look at. There's also, this is where when you discard items in BCA, let's go to, I'm going to search for discard. You can get a discard list. So if I pull this up, and you can run that for your library, and it will have all of your items that have been marked for discard and are still in the system prior to our monthly purge of discarded items. So just know that you can see that list here. I know we can also get you a count, I believe, of the number of items that have been discarded. each month if that is something that you need for record keeping purposes. I'm going to go back to shared reports, and I'd love to field any questions or hear your thoughts on BLUEcloud Analytics. I know that so we have statistics on the online catalogs, but they actually now live on the state library website. I have linked to that for you on the handout. So there's one set of statistics that you would have to go elsewhere for, and I'm going to show you where that is. You can either follow that link. This is just enterprise payments if your library uses that. That's listed here, or I can show you how to get there. This is our state library website, msl.mt.gov. And if you scroll down, there's this cool little pie chart. And if you click on that, that takes you to different dashboards for the state library. A lot of them are specific to the state library as its own entity. But if you scroll down at the very end, there's the MSC online catalog. And if you click on that and give it a second, this can tell you some cool things. As it says on top, this is the online catalog summary for the whole shared catalog. So here we are looking at places that have used access the shared catalog all across the state. And you can look at total page views, how many times folks have tried to gone to log into their account versus individual resource clicks for the month, and the top things people click on, which probably wouldn't surprise you. It defaults to all libraries in the consortium by fiscal year. So that can be narrowed down to specific library. And once you start accumulating data, you'll be able to view that as well. So if, on the other hand, if you go to catalog search trends, this is its own button. It takes you to a new data set on the catalog. Give it a sec. And this is where you can get your cool word cloud of what folks are searching for across the consortium, the list of search terms here as well, and then number of unique searches by certain time periods and looking at it in different ways. And again, this was updated as of June, so I think we're catching up on updating it, but you can look by your library as well once you guys start getting more data. So like for the Bozeman Public Library, looks a little more like that. So I just wanted to let you know that. I know this is a separate place that you need to look if you're curious about your online catalog statistics, but it is here. There's also, just to toot the state library's horn, there's also some cool information about our different programs. So if you're just curious, I just wanted to throw this out there because it's kind of fun end of the day stuff. The state library does a bunch of things. It's not just staffing the shared catalog. We have our cadastral, the natural heritage program, consulting, continuing education, Woot Woot Collet, that's all the work that Collet does. The Montana History Portal is just one I want to highlight because this may be something that you guys like to use to pull in for some of your classes, or some of the staff you work with maybe do. Their top pages, they do like contests for the best memes, taking a historical photo and turning it into a meme. historical buildings of Great Falls, a walking tour, Billings West High School yearbooks. This is all digitized and it's on the history portal page. So just so you know, that's there and it's really cool.